Chapter 105. In the afternoon, a golden-haired, golden-eyed young man walked on the streets of Winterwood City with a smile on his face. Some of the more powerful people in Winterwood City looked at Wyrm with shock and relief when they saw Wyrm. From time to time, he would stop at a gourmet shop to buy some delicious food. In the end, the young man would always visit the food market. When he walked to a familiar shop, the young man had just reached the door when an uncle who was the store manager walked out and shouted, "Yo, Amiya, you're here to sell food again." Wyrm looked at the store manager who greeted him and smiled. "Yes, I have to make my cute sister's favorite omelette rice." "As expected, the meat in your shop is still the freshest." The uncle laughed, "Ha ha ha, of course. I've been running this shop in Winterwood City for more than 10 years. The freshness of the meat is one of the best." At this time, the store manager of the next shop suddenly appeared. "Humph. If you want to talk about the quality of the ingredients, you have to look for my shop. Although the meat in my shop is slightly inferior, the vegetables in my shop are the freshest in Winterwood City." "You old man. Are you trying to make trouble for me?" "You're the one who's trying to make trouble for Brother Amiya. It's obvious that Brother Amiya wants to cook for his beloved sister. You actually sold your stale vegetables to Brother Amiya while I was busy and closed the shop. I think you're provoking me." Looking at the two quarrelsome store managers who looked like they were about to fight, Wyrm felt helpless. "The two of you have a good relationship," Wyrm said gently. The two uncles had taken root here ever since Wyrm bought food here. Although they looked like they were in conflict, they were actually quarrelsome. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put their shops together to do business. Hearing Wyrm's words, the two uncles snorted and then took out the ingredients that they had prepared. "Amiya, this is the best meat that I've carefully selected. I'll sell it to you at the same price as before. Brother Amiya, these are the vegetables that I personally picked. I'm selling them to you at the same price as before." Wyrm smiled helplessly, paid the bill, thanked him, and left. Then, the two uncles began to discuss. "Brother Amiya is such a good returnee. Why does he always buy ingredients personally?" Another uncle said, "It's obvious that you're ignorant. Amiya dotes on his sister a lot. Every time he cooks for his sister, he buys the ingredients himself." "That's true. Otherwise, with Brother Amiya's family business, he wouldn't need to run errands himself." "That's great. I wonder if he'll take a fancy to my daughter." "Forget about it. I think my niece is better." It was another round of shoulder to shoulder, as if they were about to fight. Wyrm, who hadn't gone far, listened to the conversation between the two uncles' store managers and felt helpless. At this time, Wyrm had been in this world for almost 5 years. 5 years ago, Wyrm used magic to hypnotize various high-level officials and underworld leaders in Winterwood City, making them all think that Wyrm was a very powerful senior who had returned from overseas. He also used magic to hypnotize the director of a large company with an address in Winterwood. Then, Wyrm put his name in this company. After that, he took out the few remaining treasures in his dragonist and exchanged them for a large amount of currency. After all, when he was in Nasarick, Wyrm took out most of his treasures to supply Nasarick. Since then, Wyrm's treasures had shrunk significantly. At this time, Wyrm's dragonist had no treasures except for some necessary props. Also, after Wyrm and Mayu came to Amiya family, Amiya Kiritsugu passed away not long after, as if he had fallen asleep. Wyrm didn't plan to help Amiya Kiritsugu with his treatment, and Amiya Kiritsugu didn't plan to let Shiro Amiya or himself ask Wyrm for help. That man already had a trace of death. No, it should be said that he died long ago. If there was no Shiro Amiya, then the only thing left was a walking corpse acting in order to save the world. Wyrm adopted Shiro Amiya and Amiya Mayu as Amiya Kiritsugu's distant relative from abroad. That's right, at this time, Wyrm's name was Wyrm Amiya. Although it wasn't much, the name was always fake, so there was no need to pay attention to it. Wyrm returned to the gorgeous Amiya mansion, put down the ingredients, and prepared to pick up Mayu, who was about to finish school. Mayu was taught the basics by Wyrm, and then waited for about a year. After all, the secret of the Shitsuki family attracted many magicians. When Meiyu was in primary school. At this time, Meiyu was 10 years old and was in primary school, while Shiro Amiya was 17 years old and was in high school. Shiro Amiya gradually became stronger after Amiya Kiritsugu passed away, just like how he always refused Wuming's pick-up and drop-off. Wuming still remembered the words of the 12-year-old Shiro Amiya. "I'm already 12 years old. I've grown up. I don't need Big Brother to pick me up." Because Wuming adopted Shiro Amiya and Amiya Meiyu as a distant relative of the Amiya family, both of them called him Big Brother. Meiyu didn't want to be outdone, and seemed to want to go to school alone. In the end, Wuming resolutely refused. What a joke, Meiyu was only 6 years old at that time. There was still about a year before the characteristics of the Shitsuki family godchild disappeared. It was inevitable that there would be magicians who knew about the Shitsuki family's godchild. Amiya Kiritsugu was suspicious because the Shitsuki family deliberately hid girls under 7 years old. There would definitely be magicians who suspected or even knew about the Shitsuki family's godchild. As for Meiyu's golden pupils, Wuming used a special kind of magic, similar to contact lenses, to turn Meiyu's golden pupils into a special color between orange and pale gold. For the time being, he called it orange gold. Wuming also changed his pupils to orange gold. Together with Shiro Amiya's orange-yellow pupils, they looked like a family. Wuming locked the door and headed towards Meiyu's primary school, Suichuan-hara Academy. To be precise, it was the primary school of Suichuan-hara Academy. Because Wuming was worried about Meiyu, Wuming gradually quickened his pace. He arrived at Suichuan-hara Academy. Suichuan-hara Academy had a high school section and a primary school section. Wuming calculated the time. Shiro Amiya, who was in the high school section, and Meiyu, who was in the primary school section, were almost finished with school. However, Wuming still walked to the entrance of the primary school section. Next to the high school section of Suichuan-hara Academy, there was another school, which was the primary school of Suichuan-hara Academy. After waiting for a moment, the school bell rang. Slowly, people began to walk out of the school. These were all returning home, including Meiyu and Shiro. After a moment, Wuming saw a petite figure in the crowd. Meiyu. Wuming shouted at Meiyu with a smile. "Brother!" Meiyu trotted and sped up, throwing herself into Wuming's arms. Chapter 106. Wuming crouched down and hugged Meiyu, who was running towards him. He stroked Meiyu's head and said, "How was it? Did you listen to the teacher and wait for me in school?" "Yes, I was very obedient today. Also, I made a new friend today." Meiyu looked at Wuming with her big eyes and said cheerfully. "Oh. Friend? What kind of friend?" Wuming was a little happy. Meiyu had been in this school for almost 4 years. Wuming still remembered that at the beginning, many people thought that Meiyu was a strange child, and no one was willing to be friends with her. After all, Meiyu had just developed feelings for him. It was no wonder that people would say that about Meiyu. At that time, Meiyu didn't care much about it. Wuming once asked Meiyu why she wanted to go to school. According to Meiyu, going to school was something that Wuming wanted. Meiyu would do what Wuming wanted her to do. This made Wuming very helpless at that time. This couldn't be blamed on Meiyu. When she had just developed feelings for him, other than Wuming, even Shiro Amiya, who she saw every day, couldn't attract Meiyu's attention. Meiyu only cared about Wuming. At that time, Wuming followed Meiyu almost every day in spirit form. Firstly, it was to protect Meiyu. Secondly, it was to pay attention to Meiyu's behavior in school. Wuming wanted to slowly guide Meiyu according to her interests in school. In the end, Wuming discovered that Meiyu's interests could be said to be 0, or it could be said to be all. Meiyu was very interested in this world that she didn't see before. Especially under Wuming's guidance, Meiyu developed feelings for him. However, Meiyu wasn't interested in anything in particular. Moreover, Wuming was called to the office more than once by the head teacher because of Mayo's lack of feelings in school. Wuming had no choice but to use the reason that Mayu had been in a car accident and suffered severe brain damage to dispel the doubts of the teachers. Fortunately, around 2 years ago, Mayo's feelings at that time had almost completely recovered. Other than her cold voice and introverted personality, she was basically the same as an ordinary person. From then on, Mayu began to gradually make friends. Every time Mayu made a friend, she would confide in him. Wuming would also listen patiently and ask Mayu from time to time. It was the same this time. She's behind. Let me introduce her to you. Mayu asked with a red face. And, I also want to meet Mayo's new friend. Wuming looked in the direction that Mayu pointed. A little girl with golden curly hair in a ponytail was hiding in a corner. Her small head was poking out to look at Wuming and Mayu. Erica, over here. Mayu waved at the little girl with golden curly hair in a ponytail. The little girl named Erica heard Mayo's call and walked over awkwardly. Brother, this is Erica, Erica Ainsworth. Mayu said to Wuming. Wuming looked at Erica with an expressionless face. Erica also looked at Wuming with a strange smile. Is that so? You're Erica. I'm Mayo's brother. My name is Amiya Wuming. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. However, after Erica finished speaking, her mouth changed as if she said something, but Mayu didn't see it. Wuming's expression didn't change. He said to Mayu, we have something to do today. I'm really sorry. Erica, we'll leave first. With that, Wuming pulled Mayu out of the Suichuan primary school. Erica didn't move from her spot. A moment later, a teenager wearing the Suichuan primary school uniform came over. Erica, are you sure it's him? Is that so? Then let's go. With that, the teenager left with Erica. Wuming held Mayo's hand and walked on the road. Mayu asked with some concern, brother, what's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Wuming held Mayo's hand and said while walking, Mayu, when did you meet that Erica? Although Mayu was puzzled, she still told Wuming the information about Erica. When I was eating lunch this afternoon, Erica suddenly ran to me and said that she admired me and wanted to be friends with me. The strange thing is, I've never seen Erica in school. Maybe she's a new student. Wuming was relieved. This new year, Wuming felt more than once that someone was watching him, and there were more than once magicians who attacked the Amiya mansion. Although these people were dealt with by Wuming, but every time they were dealt with, the magician would turn into a puppet. With Wuming's eyes, he could naturally see that this was the most basic magic of magicians, replacement magic. This was a high-level method of replacing a person's personality with a puppet. The only one who could use this kind of magic was one of the 3 families of the Yu family, the House of Einstein Barons. Wuming didn't know whether the other party was Einstein Barons or not, and didn't know why the other party didn't take the initiative to come, but this didn't affect Wuming's fear. Wuming secretly gave Mayu the Emerald Stone in order to prevent Mayu from being harmed during school, and also set up a large number of teleportation magic on Mayu. If there were any accidents, Wuming would be able to teleport over in an instant. Moreover, in the past 5 years, Wuming had transformed the Emerald Stone into a noble relic. Emerald Stone, Kalis Beryl, Chrysoberyl, Level, C+ type, Human Noble Relic Distance, 050 Maximum Capture, 100 people. It was a magic attire specially made by the second mage, Keshua Zelrich Subian Augustus. It was a magic attire with artificial spirits. Normally, it would be used as a head ornament, but it could borrow the magic of a parallel world to perform detection, scanning, analysis, simulation, disguise, transformation, warning, defense, and a series of other types of high-level magic attire. After becoming a noble artifact, its performance became even more perfect. However, because it was a magic attire, its level could only reach C rank. Kalis's intelligence was quite high. Wuming asked Kalis to take care of Mayu. After much reluctance, Collis followed Wu Ming's arrangement and hid on Mayo's body, becoming an accessory on her school bag. As for the Erica he met today, Wu Ming could feel that she was a living god-level character. At that time, the words Erica mouthed were Hyunryong. This made Wu Ming shocked. This meant that the other party already knew his identity. Looking at how fearless she was, she probably had a way to deal with him. Wu Ming was puzzled as to how he was exposed. Since then, after knowing that there was a hidden enemy, Shiro Amiya's memory of him had been erased by Wu Ming. Of course, this was under the condition that Shiro Amiya was willing to do it. Meiyu, our peaceful days are coming to an end. Meiyu was stunned. Wu Ming could feel that Meiyo's hand was trembling. Do you mean that I'm going to be separated from brother? Meiyu said to Wu Ming with a gloomy face. Of course not. I said that as long as I'm here, you don't have to bear the responsibility of the Shitsuki family. Wu Ming looked at Meiyu seriously. Meiyu nodded seriously. Then, the two of them walked towards the Amiya mansion. Chapter 107. After returning home, Wu Ming activated his magic workshop in the Amiya mansion. The golden staff of the seven snakes floated in the middle of the magic workshop. The entire Amiya mansion had been completely transformed by Wu Ming into his own temple, the Hyunryong Temple of Worship. Shiro Amiya had also returned to the Amiya mansion. As soon as he entered the door, Shiro Amiya shouted, "Brother! Meiyu!" Wu Ming appeared and looked at Shiro Amiya. What do you know, Shiro? Wu Ming asked. Shiro Amiya gave the letter he received in school to Wu Ming. Wu Ming opened it. Dear Hyunryong, your concealment methods are indeed brilliant, making the House of Einstein barons search for nearly 5 years before we found the Holy Grail container. Next, the House of Einstein barons will start the Holy Grail War, in order to fight for the Great Holy Grail. Shitsuki Meiyu, please look forward to it. Wu Ming finished reading the letter and looked at Shiro Amiya. Shiro, who gave you this letter? Shiro Amiya was a little embarrassed, but he still said, it was my good friend in school, Yalin Shu, who gave it to me. Wu Ming finally understood why Shiro Amiya was so unbearable. A good friend who had been with him for a few years suddenly turned against him. This made Shiro Amiya, who was not a magician, feel a little overwhelmed. It seems that Yalin Shu is a fake name, the other party is very likely from the House of Einstein barons. Big brother, are you talking about the destroyed Einsbalen, one of the 3 Yu families? Because of Wu Ming's teaching from time to time, Shiro Amiya could be regarded as a first-class magician at this moment. However, Shiro Amiya was talented in swordsmanship and projection magic. According to Wu Ming's suggestion, Shiro Amiya could practice projection magic more. Any basic magic should not be ignored, just like the House of Einstein barons' replacement magic. Wu Ming often used advanced item creation to create some items or weapons he had seen before for Shiro Amiya to analyze their composition and practice projection magic. Also, Wu Ming taught Shiro Amiya basic swordsmanship, but he did not teach him anything else. In Wu Ming's view, Shiro Amiya's talent in swordsmanship was far above projection magic. Wu Ming could only guide his path, not teach him. Shiro Amiya was a little sad, then said, what the hell is going on? Didn't Meiyo's ability disappear? Why did the Holy Grail War happen, brother? Because of Wu Ming, Shiro Amiya understood the rules and requirements of the Holy Grail War very early. This is the fate of the Shitsuki family, Wu Ming said seriously. Wu Ming once visited the Holy Church in Winterwood City. A priest named Yen Fengili confessed everything to Wu Ming. The godchild of the Shitsuki family was artificially created 400 years ago for the purpose of the Holy Grail War. The godchild of the Shitsuki family was used as a vessel to create the Holy Grail War. By sacrificing the souls of the servants, the Holy Grail War was created. In the Fourth Holy Grail War, 2 of the 3 families who organized the Holy Grail War were killed, and the remaining family also suffered a great loss. They might not even be able to maintain their status in the magic world, so the Holy Grail War was never held again. The Holy Grail War was to use cards with the servants' power to turn the masters into servants. 7 servants would fight each other, and the wish would be fulfilled on the last day. This is a war sooner or later. I'm going to the clock tower in England. You and Mayu stay here. Don't go anywhere. Don't leave this house. This is already my magic workshop. Even assassin can't sneak in, and berserker can't come in. I know. I'll participate in the Holy Grail War and protect Mayu. Shiro Amiya said solemnly. Wuming flicked Shiro's head. Let's not talk about whether you have a card or not. I'm here. You don't need to worry about the Holy Grail War. Shiro Amiya covered his forehead with a pained expression. Wuming thought for a moment and took out some defensive items from his dragonist. He told Shiro Amiya how to use it, and Wuming created a celestial lock. This is a celestial lock. Look at the other party's fearless face. I'm afraid that the other party has a divine servant. Take it first, just in case you need it. I know, brother. Shiro Amiya took the celestial lock with a serious face. Wuming looked at Mayu, who had been hiding in the corner from the beginning, and instantly came behind her. Mayu. Dash. Mayu was obviously shocked and looked at Wuming with resentment. Woo. Brother Wuming, looking at Mayu, who was embarrassed because she was caught eavesdropping, Wuming smiled. I know you have the ability to bear all this, so I told you about the magic world from the beginning. But I don't want you to learn magic. I also know that you're working hard. You've basically finished reading all the high-level books you want. Wuming has always bought a lot of books. At first, it was about the ways of the world and developing feelings. Later, Mayu began to ask for more high-level books, such as anatomy, mechanics, and so on. Wuming didn't refuse Mayu. After all, this was what Mayu wanted, not what Wuming wanted. Mayu looked at Wuming seriously. But I'm also your servant, master, and you're my master, master. It's natural for me to protect you. Wuming picked up Mayu's hand and revealed the hidden command incantation. Also, you're my sister. With this, how can I let you bear all these? Wuming hid the command incantation again and said to Mayu with a gentle face. Don't worry, I'm here. Mayu's eyes were wet. She once again remembered what Wuming said that day, because I'm here. Moreover, your brother Shiro is not someone to be trifled with. You don't need to think about these things at all. You just need to think about the future. I understand, brother Wuming, I'll stay in my room. Mayu nodded and said in a choked voice. Wuming smiled with relief. War Gate. As his voice fell, a dark portal appeared in front of Wuming. Wuming waved his hand, and a pendant flew out from Mayu's room. The pendant changed in the air and turned into a pair of golden-green dragon horn headwear, and firmly put on Wuming's head. At this moment, Wuming looked more like a dragon. Shiro, take care of Mayu. Shiro Amiya nodded solemnly. After looking at Mayu, Wuming stepped into the portal. Then, the portal disappeared, leaving Shiro Amiya with a serious and uneasy face and Amiya Mayu with a praying face. At this time, Wuming appeared in a place he had been before. The familiar corridor, the familiar door. Looking at the familiar door in front of him, Wuming knocked on the door. Please come in. Then Wuming opened the door and went straight in. Chapter 108. Wuming opened the door and went in. What he saw was the same as the other world. In the dim room sat a sturdy old man with red eyes and a short white beard. Kithe Zelik Shibine Augustus. Should I call you Hyunryong or Wuming? Zelik said with a smile. Whatever you want. It's my name anyway. I'm here for something, Wuming said indifferently, then sat down and poured himself a cup of tea. Zelik from the other world asked you to come, right? You want to ask about the information of this world, right? Zelik asked. Yes, but can you please answer me? How did the humans in this world end up being destroyed? I promised Zelik to save the world if I could, Wyrm said after taking a sip of tea. The disaster in this world has been solved by me and my other self. Solved? Wyrm looked at Zelik. Because the other me in the other world sensed a disaster that could affect parallel worlds, the other me began to unite with the other me in the other worlds. This world of mine has already been saved by the me in the other worlds through the second method of uniting. Wyrm was relieved. After all, Wyrm also noticed that the magicians in Winterwood City seemed to have received some kind of notice and were no longer so extreme. Then, could it be because of this that the other party is not in a hurry to hold the Holy Grail War? Wyrm thought. I need more information. Seeing that my other self trusts you so much, I'll reluctantly help you. Zelik looked at the dragon horn hair ornament on Wyrm's head. After about half an hour, Wyrm left the room. Because the Zelik of this world knew that Wyrm would come to this world long ago, when Wyrm appeared, Zelik found out about Wyrm's whereabouts through various means. Because Wyrm lived in Winterwood City for 5 years, Zelik also did some research on Winterwood City. Therefore, Zelik knew a lot of information that Wyrm did not know. According to Wyrm's description, Zelik judged that the other party might be the last person of Ainsworth, named Julian Ainsworth. Although the 3 families of the Yu family suffered heavy casualties in the Holy Grail War, including 2 families including Ainsworth, Ainsworth's last person, Julian Ainsworth, did not want to face this fact. Therefore, even if he knew that humanity had been saved and the world would not be destroyed, Julian still wanted to continue the Holy Grail War. According to Zelik, Julian's wish might still be to save all of humanity. Because as long as one was human, there would be no future without danger. With danger, there would be progress. Zelik knew about the heroic spirits of the 7 class cards and their users. Although those users had long said that the personalities of some people who had died long ago were replaced with machines on the dolls. Other than that, Zelik did not have any other information. After getting the information, Wyrm left. Although this world might not be the world that brought danger to other parallel worlds as Zelik said, Wyrm did not plan to leave. The main reason was because Mayu had left a deep impression on Wyrm. Wyrm could not abandon Mayu. There was also Shiro Amiya, the magician who had normal human thinking. Because of Wyrm's influence, Shiro Amiya had long abandoned Amiya Kiritsugu's wrong wish and had his own new and correct wish. Wyrm opened the portal and returned to the Amiya mansion. As soon as he returned, Wyrm discovered that there were people fighting in the courtyard of the Amiya mansion. It was a tentacle-like monster and Shiro Amiya who had used a class card. In one of the rooms of the Amiya mansion, there was an injured purple-haired girl who was about the same age as Shiro Amiya. She was lying unconscious on the ground. At that moment, Wyrm more or less knew what had happened. Wyrm waved his hand, and an oval lens appeared beside Wyrm. Wyrm walked toward the purple-haired girl's room while watching Shiro Amiya and the strange tentacle-like monster fight. The tentacle-like monster was 3 meters tall, and its face seemed to be a skull mask. It looked like the monster was made of tentacles. This is... Assassin? Wyrm discovered the monster's true form. That was right. This was the assassin user of the card in the Holy Grail War. He watched as Shiro Amiya held 2 swords in his hands and kept dodging assassins' attacks. From time to time, he would throw flying swords and stab assassins back. On the other hand, the tentacle-like monster formed by assassin was completely unaffected. The huge tentacle-like fist kept bombarding the ground. Some of the marble slabs on the ground in the courtyard were smashed away, and soil was splashed everywhere. The originally beautiful Amiya mansion was now a mess. As if the time was right, Shiro Amiya dodged one of Assassin's attacks and jumped onto Assassin's back. He held a pair of black and white swords in his hands and stabbed toward Assassin's back. In an instant, an explosion occurred inside the tentacle-like monster. Then, there was a heart-wrenching scream. Ah! Shiro Amiya jumped to the side of the wall and looked at Assassin who was curled up. He stretched out his hand and a black bow appeared in Shiro Amiya's hand. Then, Wei Gongshiro projected a slender, spiral-shaped sword. This is the rainbow sword? Yes, Wyrm recognized this sword. This was the famous weapon of Fergus Mac Roy in Celtic legend, Caladbolg. Because it was shaped like a spiral, it was also called the spiral sword. Because Wyrm had met Fergus before, he recognized this sword. Although he was a strange guy. At this moment, this rainbow sword was obviously very different from the real rainbow sword. It was too slender, as if it was modified for shooting. Let's call it the fake spiral sword. I see, projection magic, Wyrm suddenly realized, then said, I'm really worthy of the future you, Shiro. With Wyrm's eyesight, he could already see the original body of the hero spirit card Shiro Amiya used. If there was no accident, it was the future Shiro Amiya who became a hero spirit after death. Shiro Amiya drew his bow and aimed at the curled-up tentacle ball, but a cherry-colored scarf happened to float by. Shiro Amiya seemed to have thought of something and put down the bow. Wyrm smiled. Wyrm once taught Shiro Amiya that once the opponent was determined to be the enemy, don't give the enemy a chance to breathe, unless, Wei Gong Shiro held the pseudo-spiraling sword in a reverse grip, and with the speed of lightning, he fiercely stabbed backwards. A purple-haired man with a skull mask with missing legs and arms appeared behind Shiro Amiya. The fake spiral sword steadily stabbed into his abdomen. Why? The purple-haired man asked in shock. You're the one who said it. Your tentacles can move freely after leaving you. Unless, he had absolute confidence in winning. Chapter 109. Shiro Amiya pulled out the pseudo-spiraling blade, an assassin fell to the ground weakly. No. No. I don't want to die. I don't want to. Assassin's card user crawled forward with great difficulty. Shiro Amiya jumped down from the wall, dispelled the bow and sword in his hands, and reformed the twin blades. He walked step by step towards Assassin's card user. If I didn't activate the transfer technique in time, your sister Sakura would probably have the same idea as you, Shiro Amiya said calmly. But Sakura isn't dead. I was only following Master Julian's orders. Assassin's card user seemed to have thought of something, and stopped talking with a face full of disbelief. Ha! Ha 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 ha! What Master Julian? Damn it! Fortunately, Sakura was saved by you. Shiro Amiya, come on, finish me off, finish off a dead person like me. Assassin's card user first laughed, then cried, and then asked Shiro Amiya to finish him off. Wyrm turned off the X-ray mirror, and walked into the room where the girl called Sakura was. As soon as he entered, Wyrm smelled the thick scent of blood. Wyrm took a closer look, and saw that Sakura's chest and back were covered in blood. If he was not mistaken, it was caused by assassin. Could this girl be Shiro's lover? Wyrm said with interest. After joking, Wyrm made a few gestures in the air, and a few lune runes that symbolized healing were attached to Sakura's body. With a burst of green light, Sakura's clothes instantly became brand new. If not for the bloodstains, anyone would have thought that she was a sleeping girl. Wyrm walked out of the room, and gently closed the door. Wyrm then met Shiro Amiya, who had finished off Assassin. At this moment, Shiro Amiya was still in his heroic spirit state. He wore a red headband on his forehead, and a white cloak fluttered behind him. He wore a black tight shirt and long pants, and the red sleeve on his left arm was tightly pressed against his skin, revealing the muscles that were usually hidden under his clothes. Wei Gong Shiro took out a palm-sized card with a skeleton mask and a dagger drawn on it and handed it to Wyrm. Big brother, it's just as you said. After I killed Assassin, he turned into a doll. This card is stuck on the doll. Once, a magician attacked Shiro Amiya. After Wyrm killed him, the magician turned into a mechanical doll. Therefore, Shiro Amiya also knew about the doll. Wyrm took the card and said to Shiro Amiya, I've healed your lover. Go and take a look. She should be waking up soon. Shiro Amiya blushed a little at Wyrm's words. He then stopped his heroic spirit state and handed the archer card in his hand to Wyrm. After saying, "Thank you, big brother," he quickly ran into Sakura's room. Wyrm looked at the two cards in his hands and frowned. Although the user of the assassin card was easily defeated by Wei Gong Shiro, that was only because the user of the assassin card wasn't strong. It didn't mean that the card itself was weak. Wyrm could clearly feel the presence of heroic spirits in these two cards. Especially this assassin card. Wyrm could feel that there was more than one heroic spirit in it. There were about 19 of them, but each user could only use the power of one heroic spirit. Wyrm turned on the surveillance camera in the magic workshop and looked at it. After Wyrm left, Mayu and Shiro Amiya stayed in the house and did not go out. However, after a while, a girl came to the Amiya mansion. That girl was Sakura, who was treated by Wyrm. Shiro Amiya might have known the girl named Sakura, so he brought her to his courtyard. After entering the courtyard, Sakura first cried and threw herself into Shiro Amiya's arms. Then, Sakura took out an archer card. "Senior, this is the strongest card, Archer Hero King Gilgamesh." Wyrm noticed what Sakura said. Hero King Gilgamesh. Then, with the heroic spirit that Shiro Amiya transformed from his future, Wyrm could speculate that the card was definitely not Gilgamesh's card. Sure enough, Wyrm continued to watch. Assassin sneaked in through the process of Shiro Amiya bringing Sakura in. Assassin's appearance was quite strange, even disgusting. The grayish-white skull mask covered the chin and nose, and the mouth opened and closed along with the skull mask. The whites of the eyes were all black like the pupils, and the legs seemed to be fitted with artificial limbs. The inhuman legs were thin and long, making people feel disgusted. The left hand was a thin black arm, and the right hand was completely made up of tentacles. A large number of tentacles were constantly flying in the air. Seeing the enemy, Shiro Amiya quickly put Sakura behind him and projected a sword. Then, Shiro Amiya began to fight against Assassin. Although Shiro Amiya had improved considerably under Wyrm's guidance, his opponent was still using a card that contained the power of a heroic spirit. Gradually, Shiro Amiya began to lose ground. Assassin, on the other hand, believed that Shiro Amiya was no longer a threat, so she knocked Shiro Amiya back with a heavy blow. Then, she gave up on dealing with Shiro Amiya and turned to deal with Sakura instead. Through the conversation between Assassin and Sakura, Wyrm learned that Assassin had become mentally unstable. Julian ordered Assassin to be killed and brought back to Sakura. "It seems that the power of the heroic spirit in the card will corrode the user," Wyrm said calmly. The card user of Assassin seemed to be Sakura's brother, but he had died 5 years ago. Sakura had personally told Shiro Amiya this. Shiro Amiya, who was in a sorry state, got up from the ground. Sakura stood in front of Shiro Amiya. "Senpai, let me protect you this time." Following Sakura's words, the card in her hand began to glow. Then, under Assassin and Shiro Amiya's shocked gazes, the glow covered Sakura. Then, the glow shattered and the card turned gray. Sakura looked at the card in her hand helplessly. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Why?" Assassin's cruel and disgusting laughter responded to her. "Ha ha ha ha, my poor sister. Your card has been swapped by Lord Julian. Lord Julian guessed that you would betray him. Why would Lord Julian give you the real card of the Hero King, Gilgamesh? The card you have is only a fake." Assassin calmed down from her laughter and said to Sakura, "Now, die." Following Assassin's death declaration, Sakura looked in Shiro Amiya's direction in despair. "Senpai, goodbye." Assassin's tentacles condensed and reached for Sakura. Shiro Amiya struggled to get up. He quickly and awkwardly drew a few lines in the air. A few special runes appeared in the air. The moment the tentacle arm touched Sakura, Sakura's body trembled. "Teleport!" Shiro Amiya shouted. Sakura was teleported away in an instant. Assassin was stunned on the spot. "What happened? I think I was going to kill Sakura." Where's Sakura? Where's Sakura? Where's Sakura? Looking at Assassin who had gone crazy, Shiro Amiya rolled and picked up the discarded card that Sakura dropped when she was teleported away. Wyrm turned off the surveillance mirror. What happened next was needless to say. Chapter 110. Wyrm walked to Mayo's room, knocked on the door, then opened the door and walked in. Brother Wyrm. Mayu rushed over as if she was afraid and happy. Wyrm hugged Mayu and gently patted Mayo's back. Did you listen to your brother Shiro's words? Wyrm asked. Yes, other than when brother Shiro called me to eat, I always stayed in the room and read. Mayu nodded her little head and pointed to the stacks of books on the desk in the room. Mayo's room was not as luxurious as other girls' rooms, but it was very clean. Wyrm once suggested to decorate Mayo's room, but Mayu refused. Mayu, because of her childhood experience, had a big difference in thinking compared to other children. Mayu only asked Wyrm for the necessary furniture. In addition, Wyrm also prepared a large bookshelf and desk for Mayu. Wyrm bought books for Mayu in the past 5 years, all of which were placed on this large bookshelf. Through some magic tricks Wyrm taught Mayu, Mayu made up for Mayo's lack of height. After all, this large bookshelf was really big. Wyrm looked at this room with some nostalgia. Then, Wyrm said to Mayu, Mayu, I want to send you somewhere else for a few days, no. Before Wyrm finished, Mayu interrupted him. Wyrm looked at the little girl with tears in her eyes and stopped talking. Brother Wyrm, are you starting to hate me? Mayu said. How could that be, I'm just. Wyrm said hurriedly. Then, why are you chasing me away? Mayu interrupted Wyrm again. Wyrm smiled helplessly. Then, he squatted down and said to Mayu, Mayu, I want you to go somewhere else for a few days because I'm afraid I can't protect you. Do you understand? Wyrm said this because he felt that the strongest hero king card, Gilgamesh, that Sakura had told Shiro Amiya existed. After all, Assassin, Sakura's brother, had said that the strongest hero king, Gilgamesh's card had long been swapped by Julian, which made Wyrm even more certain that Gilgamesh's card existed. But, isn't brother Wyrm the strongest hero spirit? Mayu asked. Because Mayu had asked Wyrm about his past, Wyrm casually said that he could be considered one of the strongest hero spirits. After all, Wyrm was not dead, and his original form was the origin dragon. The current hero's spirit body was just a body made of magic power by signing an equal contract with the suppression power. Strictly speaking, Wyrm's origin dragon was of a higher level than hero spirits. Just like the gods and the ruler of gods, there was a strict hierarchy that could not be changed. After all, Wyrm was the origin dragon that was born from the great origin of all worlds. In response to Mayo's question, Wyrm was a little helpless and said, That's true, but I'm not in my original form now. Besides, if the other party really has Gilgamesh's card, it's quite disadvantageous for me. Wyrm was right. Apart from weapons that contained human principles that could pose a threat to Wyrm, divine weapons could also cause harm to Wyrm. Who told him to have a divine skill? Divinity B. Rumor has it that the first-generation direct descendant of Tiamat has top-notch divinity. Due to the inaccuracy of the rumors, it was downgraded to B. Because of Wyrm's power and mystery, it ended up being a deity related to Tiamat. Although Wyrm and Gilgamesh had a good relationship and should be very close, Wyrm dared not confirm how the Gilgamesh of this world felt about him. After all, the king Gilgamesh taught by Wyrm was a woman. The most important thing was that if it was really Gilgamesh, there must be countless treasures, that is, countless noble phantoms. After all, that was the privilege of the ancient king. Among them, there was no lack of noble phantoms. The most important thing was that Gilgamesh must have Enkidu. Wyrm, who used Enkidu, knew how powerful Enkidu was. It was a real divine weapon. For enemies without divinity, Enkidu was just a particularly strong chain, but for enemies with divinity, as long as the target's divinity was higher, Enkidu's binding ability would be higher. And as long as it was an enemy with divinity, once entangled by Enkidu, it would be impossible to get rid of it. At the moment of entanglement, Enkidu would enhance the binding power according to the divinity in the target's body. That was not just the binding of the chain, but also the binding of power, speed, magic, mobility, and so on. And right now, the real heaven lock, Enkidu, was sleeping together with Wu Ming's main body in the origin of the shaped moon world. There were also Satya and Sebastian, both of them were also sleeping inside the staff of Wu Ming. Wu Ming believed that when Wu Ming came out of the root, both of them would have unprecedented changes. Wu Ming looked at Meiyu. After thinking again and again, he sighed. I really don't know what to do with you. Then, Meiyu smiled. Well, I like brother Wu Ming the most. Meiyu hugged Wu Ming's neck with both hands and said happily. Although Meiyu's voice was very low, the mood contained in it was quite loud. Well, since you are relieved, then let me go. What do you want to eat? I'll make it. Wu Ming patted Meiyu's little head and said with a smile. Omelette rice. Meiyu whispered. Wu Ming was taken aback for a moment, then he was relieved. Can't I? Meiyu looked at Wu Ming pitifully. Wu Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's not that you can't, but you eat omelette rice almost every day, aren't you tired of it? Meiyu quickly shook her little head and said, how can that be? As long as it's brother Wu Ming's omelette rice, I won't be tired of it for the rest of my life. Wu Ming stood up, touched Meiyu's little head, and said, then, you go find your big brother Shiro and ask him to come over and help me. Tonight, we can have one more person in our house, maybe we can make red bean rice. One more person? Red bean rice? Meiyu, who was still young, couldn't understand the custom of red bean rice. In this regard, Wu Ming just smiled, it's nothing, just go find him. Remember to be polite when you face that sister, she might be your future sister-in-law. I know. Then, Meiyu went to find Shiro Amiya curiously. After all, Meiyu was still interested in this sister-in-law's words. Then, I'll start too, delicious dinner. Then, Wu Ming walked into the kitchen. In a moment, the aroma wafted out of the kitchen and surrounded the Amiya mansion for a long time. Chapter 111. When Shiro Amiya came to the kitchen, there were two beautiful figures, one big and one small, standing behind him. Since Sakura's injuries were no longer serious, Sakura wanted to cook dinner together. Meiyu, on the other hand, came along because all three of them were in the kitchen. Thus, the four of them cooked dinner together. Naturally, a lot of lively things happened. First, Shiro Amiya introduced Sakura to Wu Ming. Sakura's full name was Sakura Madu. 5 years ago, she was from the Mitomo family, one of the 3 Yu families that had been completely wiped out. Due to the heavy casualties of the Enosaka family, Sakura was not killed and survived. The user of the assassin card was Sakura Madu's brother, Shinji Madu. His original body had been killed 5 years ago. Julian used the substitution magic to replace Shinji Madu's personality and soul with the body of a puppet, turning it into a puppet that obeyed orders. However, due to the incompatibility of the body and soul, coupled with the erosion of the power of the heroic spirit in the assassin card, Shinji Madu's personality had long been disrupted. He had become a mental patient who obeyed Julian's orders. When Wu Ming was treating Sakura Madu, he used magic to check Sakura Madu's body structure. He was sure that she had not been killed, but was living in the world as a person. He did not want her brother, Shinji Madu, to be played with after his death, causing his personality to be disrupted. In the end, he was freed by Shiro Amiya. That's right. In the end, Shinji Madu gave up resisting because he instantly regained his personality in the face of the threat of death. From there, he understood the cause and effect of the matter. In the end, he asked Shiro Amiya to take care of his sister, Sakura Madu. After that, he was freed by Shiro Amiya. Wu Ming held a skeptical attitude towards the claim that he was saved by another member of the Yu family. According to Wuming's knowledge, one of the three families of the Yu family, the Enosaka family, only had a 10-year-old girl left. If Sakura Madu was really helped by the Enosaka family, then the two girls would have to depend on each other for survival. Judging from Sakura Madu's expression, she seemed to have some conflict with the Enosaka family. However, that was a personal matter after all, and Wuming was not in a position to ask about it. Anyway, at the moment, Sakura Madu was not a threat to Wuming and the others. Not to mention that Sakura Madu was willing to risk her life for Shiro Amiya to give the strongest hero King Gilgamesh card to Shiro Amiya. At the moment, the Amiya mansion was Wuming's magic workshop. The power of a caster was that he could create his own territory. A powerful caster could even be called a god in his own territory. The reason why Shinji Madu could sneak in was because Wuming had left his magic workshop, and Shiro Amiya, who was temporarily in charge of the magic workshop, was still a half-baked magician. Wuming was shocked that I could teleport Sakura Madu away when Assassin activated her noble phantasm. If it was done by Wuming, it would be very easy, and if Wuming was in the magic workshop, he could kill Assassin the moment she entered the Amiya mansion. Of course, that was if Wuming let Assassin in. If Wuming didn't want to, let alone Assassin, even Berserker wouldn't be able to come in. Of course, if it was those heroic spirits, it would be a different story. Then accompanied by Wuming's ridicule, it seems to be the power of love. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu blushed like a monkey's butt. After the four of them had finished cooking dinner, they gathered at the dining table and had a delicious meal in their eyes. Sakura, you can stay here tonight, Wuming said to Sakura, who was cleaning up the dishes with Shiro Amiya. Hey! Hey! Sakura Madu and Shiro Amiya both made a strange sound. There's nothing strange about it. After all, Sakura has been ordered to be killed by Julian. If you let Sakura walk around casually, she may die. The two of them reacted, and then Shiro Amiya said, That's right, Sakura. It's very dangerous for you to go out casually. It's better for you to stay here. Sakura Madu blushed, then nodded, Then I'll stay here. Please take care of me, Senpai, Onie-sama, and Sister Meiyu. Sakura Madu's ambiguous words made Shiro Amiya a little uncomfortable, but Wuming smiled and nodded. Meiyu didn't understand the meaning behind it, so she replied to Sakura Madu. Please take care of me, Sister Sakura. Just like that, the three siblings in the Amiya mansion became four. That night, Wuming directly used the magic workshop's ability to clear out a room for Sakura Madu to live in. Wuming didn't need a room at first, but after Amiya Kiritsugu passed away, Wuming added the identity of Amiya's distant relative and prepared a room for himself. After all, since he was going to stay for a long time, Wuming wasn't someone who didn't know how to enjoy life. So the three rooms were arranged in the order of Wuming, Meiyu, and Shiro. Because Wuming and the other two rooms were next to each other, Sakura Madu's room was also next to each other. In this way, the rooms were arranged in the order of Wuming, Meiyu, Shiro, and Sakura. At night, everyone else fell asleep, and Wuming stood alone in the courtyard. Wuming picked up the card in his hand, which depicted an assassin wearing a skull mask. Install, Dream Summon, the card began to glow, turned into a stream of light, and instantly covered Wuming, and then the light dissipated. At this moment, Wuming was wearing a black tights, a cloak similar to a coat covered his whole body, and the cloak was constantly swaying with the cool night breeze. Wuming's face was wearing a slightly majestic and ferocious skull mask. Through the mask, Wuming looked at his right hand, which was no different from usual, but it was bandaged. Wuming learned the use of this card through Golden Green Chalice analysis. Is this one of Hasan Sabah? Wuming said. Chalice, analyze my current physical condition. After Wuming finished speaking, a pair of golden green dragon horns appeared in the air. Master, your body is possessed by a strange magical power. Your right hand has mutated, and an evil magical power covered it. Other than that, your physical condition is fine, and it has slightly improved. Although your body will not be affected, this evil magical power is harmful to your body, and it is recommended that you withdraw from the heroic spirit state immediately. Since Wuming said those words to Golden Green 5 years ago, although Golden Green still called Wuming master, its tone was no longer as stiff as before. Instead, it was full of emotion. In general, as long as it was harmful to Wuming, no matter how harmful it was, Golden Green Kalas would always give advice. I know, Kalas, I want to study this class card again, please indulge me this time. Wuming said with a smile. You always say that. As expected, I'm just a magic costume. It's impossible for an owner to listen to the words of a magic costume. Golden Emerald Kelly was silent for a while before she said sadly. You too, every time it's a trick. Forget it, let's sleep first, and enjoy these last few days. It was obvious that this was not the first time this pair of master and servant had this conversation. Chapter 112. It's all Master's fault for not listening to my advice. I've always been thinking about you. Kalas said in a cold voice. Wuming activated Fantasy Summon, Install, and his body glowed. The light condensed in Wuming's palm and turned into a card. Wuming's body returned to its original appearance. Well, let's go to sleep. Kalas, you should also go to bed early. Wuming said and began to walk toward the house. I know, Master, I will go to bed early. Kalas followed Wuming, was silent for a while, and then said affirmatively. Wuming looked at Kalas, who was floating in the air, and said, Don't try to play any tricks. Just like before, I will temporarily shut down all your analytical abilities. Kalas shrugged helplessly and said, I will pay attention to my rest. Please rest assured, Master. However, Wuming still expressed helplessness for this human-like action as always. God knows what kind of hobby Zelik had. He actually set the magic costume to be able to move freely like a human. Can you imagine the scene of a pair of dragon horns constantly moving? It was really funny. Okay, let's go to sleep. Please don't interrupt my speech. It's very impolite, Master. I know. The master and servant walked into the house. The courtyard returned to its silent scene. The night slowly disappeared, and the day came. Wuming came to the courtyard early and took out the assassin class card. Install, Fantasy Summon. Wuming changed into the appearance of wearing a skull mask, a black cloak, and a bandage on his right hand. After all, Kalas was Wuming's noble phantasm. Wuming could freely control her. Therefore, Wuming put his noble phantasm Kalas in a temporary state. In short, it was sleeping mode. Only then could he concentrate on studying the card. Wuming waved his hand, and a large amount of soil on the ground gathered, forming a few soil animals of different shapes. Wuming thought about the name of the relic and pointed his right hand at one of the mud animals. Zabaniya, delusional voice. The bandage on Wuming's right hand loosened, revealing a monster-like arm. Immediately after, his arm instantly extended and touched the soil animal that Wuming had locked onto. Then, he instantly retracted his arm. At this moment, something appeared in Wuming's hand, a blood-red heart. However, this heart did not beat. Wuming crushed it, and the targeted soil animal began to disintegrate, as if the magic power was insufficient. Wuming instantly increased the output of magic power and supplied it to the earth animal. Then, the collapsing earth animal gradually recovered. After that, Wuming did the same thing to the other earth animals. Without exception, all of them collapsed first, and with the support of Wuming's magic power, they regained the appearance of the earth animal. Does it only have a pure lethality to inanimate objects, and such a weak lethality? Wuming put the bandage on his right hand back in place, and his right hand became like an ordinary person again. The power that Wuming was using at that moment was the power of Hassan Sabah, who had the hand of a demon god. The strange right hand just now was that demon god's arm. According to Wuming's experimental analysis, this relic simulated the opponent's life into a heart, which was the model of the opponent's heart. Although it was a model, it had the ability to curse. Moreover, this ability was only effective on living creatures with hearts. After all, for living creatures with hearts, the heart was their weakness. The main thing was that if the heart was gone, it was basically impossible to survive. Generally, for those without hearts, this relic could also simulate a heart, but its power would be greatly reduced, and it would become purely lethality. It seems like this ability is only effective against living creatures, Wuming said calmly. At that moment, Wuming wanted to try it on living creatures. He shook his head. After all, he could not leave his magic workshop too frequently. After that, Wuming began to test Hasan Saba's skill. No, it should be a skill that all assassins had, aura concealment. The aura concealment skill that Wuming used by Hasan Saba was a grade A. Basically, it could be said that no one would be able to find him. Of course, if there was a special relic, it would be different. Wuming thought to himself. His body gradually disappeared, as if the original person had suddenly disappeared. After a while, Shiro Amiya yawned and walked out of the room, starting the task of preparing breakfast. Wuming and Shiro Amiya each took care of the food for the day, changing it day by day. Shiro Amiya walked and walked, but suddenly, he stopped. Why do I feel like something is approaching me? Shiro Amiya looked around cautiously and said in disbelief. Suddenly, Shiro Amiya stood in the same place nervously, with a "don't blame me if you come any closer" posture. Wuming suddenly appeared behind Shiro Amiya, a dark knife was placed on Shiro Amiya's neck. Shiro Amiya was shocked. He did not realize that the guy behind him was approaching, and at that moment, a knife was placed on his neck. How is it, Shiro? You didn't expect this, right? Wuming said. Then, Wuming put down the knife in his hand. Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming in relief. I knew it. Let's not talk about whether there is an assassin card or not. Even if there is, I don't think anyone can sneak into your magic workshop. Wuming smiled, then threw a card with a woman with a bow and arrow on it to Shiro Amiya. You have to have the ability to protect yourself. If you encounter the same situation as before, do you think those people will kill you instantly or chat with you? Wuming teased. Shiro Amiya took the card that could transform into his future heroic spirit form and nodded at Wuming. I got it, brother. Then, Wuming asked, right, is Sakura still not up yet? I kind of missed the soup she made last night. Shiro Amiya said helplessly, brother, Sakura had a close shave with death yesterday. She chatted with me for half a day before going to sleep. She is still weak now. Let's not disturb her. At that moment, Shiro Amiya's face was flushed. Oh, you're indeed my brother. You got her so quickly. Wuming said sarcastically. Wait, what do you mean by that? We were just chatting last night. Wuming did not listen to him. Instead, he walked to Mayo's room. All right. Go and prepare dinner. Julian will definitely send people to attack us today. You have to be alert. He might have a heroic spirit card with a unique relic or skill. After that, Wuming walked into the house. Shiro Amiya was stunned when he heard that it was Julian. However, he soon reacted. Wei Gongshi clenched his fists, and his gaze became even more resolute. Chapter 113. After breakfast, Wuming and Shiro Amiya began to fight one-on-one. Sakura Madu and Mayu stood on the side, watching the two. Install, Dream Summon. As the incantation fell, Wei Gongshi's heroic spirit transformed. Shiro Amiya instantly used projection magic to condense a pair of black and white dual swords and rushed toward Wuming. Ganjiang Moi, husband and wife sword. Wuming observed Shiro Amiya's dual swords. Create green item, advanced item creation. As soon as his voice fell, a pair of ordinary knight swords appeared in each of Wuming's hands. Boom! The knight swords collided with Ganjiang Moi. The two of them kept waving the swords in their hands, and the impact of the swords hit the courtyard. Wuming and Shiro Amiya created a magical barrier around them to prevent the aftermath from affecting Meiyu and Sakura Madu. So powerful, Senpai and Oniai-sama. Sakura Madu covered her mouth and said in surprise. Meiyu had seen a lot of things, so she wasn't surprised. However, she still felt that it was unbelievable for her scholarly brother. Because in the beginning, 5 years ago, Shiro Amiya was killed by Wuming in one move. Now Shiro Amiya could fight with Wuming for dozens of rounds, which was quite good. Not bad, Shiro. Wuming said to Shiro Amiya while waving the swords. Sure enough, even if I use the card, Oniai-san is still as strong as ever. Shiro Amiya said. I'm going to work harder, Shiro. After that, Wuming's movement suddenly changed. The knight's sword seemed to be tied to a boulder, and each blow was mixed with heavy power, constantly bombarding Shiro Amiya. With each bombardment, Shiro Amiya's Ganjiang Moi would inevitably shatter, and then Shiro Amiya would use projection magic again in an instant to recondense the dual swords. Wei Gong Shiro kept retreating in the midst of the constant attacks and destruction, until, boom. What? Wuming shattered one of his knight swords, and a large number of fragments flew in front of Shiro Amiya, blocking his sight. In Shiro Amiya's surprised eyes, Wuming held a sword with both hands and swung it down. Shiro Amiya flew out, rolled a few times on the ground, and stopped. Senpai. Sakura Madu saw Shiro Amiya fell to the ground and quickly ran over to help Shiro Amiya up. Shiro Amiya deactivated his heroic spirit form and was weakly supported by Sakura Madu. Oniai-san, you're still so merciless. Shiro Amiya bitterly smiled. Wuming loosened the knight's sword in his hand that had reached the limit of its durability, and the knight's sword disappeared into spots of light, and then said, You just fought me as a servant. If I still suppressed my power like before, then this battle would be meaningless to you. If Oniai-san didn't train with me every day, I might even forget that Oniai-san is a servant. Wuming walked to Shiro Amiya's side, and several Lune healing spells appeared, and Shiro Amiya's body emitted a green light. And I'm not a dead heroic spirit, maybe I'll come back to you one day after I leave. After Wuming finished speaking, the atmosphere fell into silence. Wuming also realized that he said something wrong, but it was a fact. After all, Wuming couldn't stay here forever. Sakura Madu also noticed that Shiro Amiya and Meiyu were silent, and then she felt that she should change the topic. Actually, I have a question to ask Oniai-sama. Oniai-sama, you are a caster servant, right? Why is your melee ability so strong? That's because I'm a melee mage. Wuming said jokingly, and then looked at Shiro Amiya, hinting him to explain. Actually, Oniai-san's real identity is Hyunryong, the one who taught Hero King. Shiro Amiya said. Yura Hyunryong. Sakura Madu exclaimed in surprise. Yes, it's really an ill-fated relationship. Gilgamesh's card is with Julian, right? I really want to see it. Wuming said with some nostalgia. After all, Wuming left Uruk for some time, and Wuming missed that Sundara girl. He didn't know whether Gilgamesh in this parallel world was a man or a woman. Oniai-san, you just condensed magical power into your sword, right? Shiro Amiya asked. Yes, because I'm not dead, even if I'm a caster servant, I don't have any magical skills, but I won't be directly affected, and I can still use magical power skillfully. Moreover, I'm a caster servant who is most familiar with magical skills, so attaching magical power to my sword is a piece of cake. Although that's what he said, generally speaking, a caster servant is basically not a warrior, so basically, no warrior can be a caster. Of course, if someone can be like Wuming, then it's Wuming's archer, Sharon. If it's him, he can use magical power like Wuming. After all, Sharon is the teacher of the great heroes in Greek mythology, and he has the adaptability of all 7 classes. Well, you 3 go and rest, there are guests coming. After he finished speaking, Wei Gongshi and the others felt the ground tremble slightly. Then, Wuming's hand crossed the air, and an oval mirror appeared. Through the far-end perspective mirror, Wyrm and others can clearly see a small giant with a height of more than 2 meters and a magician wearing a robe. One of them is walking on the ground, the other is flying in the sky, and they are moving in a certain direction. Of course, Wyrm and others are very clear that they are moving toward the Amiya mansion. Are they? Berserker and Caster. Shiro Amiya was surprised. After all, not to mention Caster flying in the sky, the seemingly irrational giant is even more terrifying. The giant's eyes were red, and he was breathing heavily. His hair was disheveled and messy. He was only wearing a combat uniform. His upper body was bare, and his muscles looked very powerful. His feet were bare, and he was holding a stone weapon that looked like both an axe and a sword. At first glance, it's not a good enemy. Only sending Berserker and Caster, are you looking down on me? Wyrm said lightly. Kalas, can you analyze the power of these two heroic spirits? Golden Green's dragon horn appeared on Wyrm's head, and then it made a sound. Through Berserker and Caster's clothes, I can judge that they are Greek characters, but I can't analyze everything with the current information. Is that so, Shiro? Take Mayu and Sakura back to their room. Wyrm ordered. I know, brother. Soon, Shiro Amiya sent Sakura Madu and Mayu back to their room. Then, Shiro Amiya used the card, entered the heroic spirit state, and came to Wyrm's side. At this moment, Berserker and Caster have arrived outside the Amiya mansion. Chapter 114. Berserker stood straight in front of the Amiya mansion, while Caster was flying in the air. The Ainsworth family is really useless, they can't even subdue a mere prop. Atlam Garyasta said disdainfully. As a member of a new family, Atlam said that as one of the supervisors of the three families, they couldn't even control the Great Holy Grail. To participate in the Holy Grail War, they actually came to take the Great Holy Grail. The Ainsworth family is really useless, no wonder they were exterminated. Atlam was wearing a mage robe, a hood on his head, holding a staff, floating beside Berserker and cursing. Hey! Mad Dog, I will open the enchantment of this magic workshop, you quickly go in and teach them a good lesson for me. Roar, roar, roar. Berserker made an unknown roar, but it seemed that this Berserker was very obedient to Atlam's words. Just when Atlam was about to cast Kanagi magic to open the magic workshop of Wyrm, the enchantment in front of the two automatically opened. Oh ho, you're quite tactful, aren't you? Saves me from wasting time. However, if you can consciously hand over the Great Holy Grail, that would be perfect. It would save me a lot of trouble, Atlam said arrogantly. Roar, 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 roar. Berserker roared furiously and rushed forward step by step. Wyrm instantly appeared in front of Berserker, which made Berserker, who still had a trace of sanity, stop. Atlam asked arrogantly, are you the servant summoned by the Great Holy Grail? I didn't expect you to be a caster like me. You are really suitable to guard the Great Holy Grail. Because Saber, Lancer, and Archer were basically not weak in terms of magic power, Caster's damage to them was not considerable. Rider was in a better situation than Caster because of the bonus of his mount. Assassin, who was also known as the weakest class, didn't need to fight at all. And Berserker, needless to say, Berserker's skill bonus made Berserker become a servant that was not weaker than upper 3 mounts. That was to say, Berserker's skill bonus made Berserker become a servant that was not weaker than upper 3 mounts. It can be said that except for Assassin, who was not good at frontal combat, Caster was the weakest class among all the classes. However, as far as Wyrm knew, Caster could be said to be the strongest at some point. So, who gave you the courage to challenge me, Julian? Wyrm smiled and said in a gentle tone. Oh. You're pretty arrogant, aren't you? So you're the teacher of the ancient king? Arya bragged so much about you, but you're just a magician from the divine generation. You were just born a few thousand years before me, humph. Just a servant, just a tool, I don't know what you are talking about. Now I also have the power of a god's magician, but before that, let me see how you deal with Berserker. I don't want to hide it from you, Berserker's real name is Hercules. Atlam seemed to be a bit too arrogant, he satirized Wyrm and finally exposed Berserker's real name. However, even if he looked down on servants, he didn't think that Castor, who dared to face Berserker and didn't panic, didn't have a trump card. To be on the safe side, Atlam let Berserker go first. Then Berserker, who still had a trace of consciousness, seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with Atlam's exposure of his real name, but he still responded to Atlam and rushed toward Wyrm. The huge axe slashed toward Wyrm at a speed that was beyond the ordinary servants. In an instant, smoke filled the air. Atlam didn't expect Berserker to be able to kill Wyrm. After all, Castor, who could face Berserker without any defense, either had defensive means or teleportation ability. Sure enough, when the smoke dispersed, Wyrm disappeared, and the ground was still intact. Berserker's attack only raised a trace of dust, even the ground that had been transformed into Wyrm's magic workshop couldn't be broken. Teleportation. Atlam frowned. Just when Atlam was carefully looking for Wyrm's position, Wyrm's voice came into their ears. So that's how it is. Thank you for telling me the name of the most difficult Berserker, Castor. In an instant, a large number of silver chains broke through the air and madly wrapped around Berserker's body. Berserker could still struggle at first, but when the silver chains had tightly wrapped around Berserker, Berserker couldn't move anymore. At that moment, Berserker was like a mummy that was standing in an attacking posture. Except for the eyes, the rest of his body was wrapped by a large number of silver chains that appeared from the golden ripples in the air. Oh! Do you think you can trap Hercules with just chains? You're too naive. Atlam shouted to the surroundings. Then, he silently searched for Wyrm's location. However, to Atlam's disappointment, not only he couldn't find Wyrm's position, but even Berserker couldn't break free from those silver chains. What's going on? For not being able to find Wyrm, Atlam was calm. After all, this was Castor's magic workshop. It was normal to not be able to find him, but it was abnormal that Berserker couldn't break free from the chains. After all, this was the card of the great hero of Greek mythology, Hercules, as the god of strength. How could he not break free from the chains? That's normal, Castor, this is Enkidu. Wyrm's figure appeared beside Berserker, as if he was invisible before. Enkidu. How is that possible? Isn't that the hero king, Gilgamesh's noble phantasm? Atlam was a little panicked at the moment. After all, the reason why he came here to seize the Great Holy Grail was because of his selfishness, and he didn't know why he could command the almost irrational Berserker Hercules card user. After all, the normal Hercules was already very powerful, and with the bonus of Berserk, his attributes could be regarded as the ceiling level. Moreover, Hercules also had a powerful noble phantasm called 12 Trials, God Hand. 12 Trials, God Hand, Level, B-Type, Noble Phantasm Attack Range, Maximum Effect, 1 person. It gave Hercules a body that could resist damage below B-Level, including B-Level. This noble phantasm also had the effect of automatically resurrecting the body after death, giving Hercules the ability to resurrect 11 times, and with enough magical power, the number of resurrections consumed could be recovered. It gave the effect of, after receiving damage once, it will generate resistance to the same type of damage next time. It could be said that Berserker Hercules was an invincible hero spirit, but it had a fatal weakness. Divinity, Ace, the hybrid of Zeus and human, Hercules, who was welcomed as a god after death, had a high divinity skill. This skill became Hercules' biggest weakness. Chapter 115. How is that possible? That's the Enkidu we're talking about. Atlam exclaimed with his eyes wide open. Wyrm didn't have Enkidu at the moment, and the real Enkidu was still in his root. But Wyrm had a bug-like skill called Create Great Item. At this moment, those Enkidu that wrapped around Berserker were created by Wyrm with this skill. Since then, Wyrm has been promoted to Castor, and through the connection with the Great Holy Grail, and through the inherent skill miracle, Wyrm found that many of his skills have undergone a qualitative change. Take Create Great Item for example. The effect of this skill could be said that as long as the item created by Wyrm was the same as the real item. The only drawback was the durability. If it was expressed in terms of attributes, then the item created by Wyrm with Create Great Item would have an E durability. The way to maintain the durability was to constantly infuse the created item with magical power that was almost equivalent to an EX level noble phantasm every second. After all, it was a fake item that could be created out of thin air, and this only worked on Wyrm. After all, no one had that much magical power. However, it was still bearable for Wyrm, who had an unimaginable amount of magical power. Just like the dozens of Enkidu that were binding Berserker at this moment. Even if those dozens of Enkidu were noble phantasm, if Wyrm let them maintain their durability, it would take 3 months of continuous magical power infusion to deplete Wyrm's magical power. And that was not counting the amount of magical power Wyrm had to restore himself. All in all, you have lost, caster. Wyrm smiled and said to Atlam. Lost? Are you kidding me? Even without Berserker, I won't lose. Atlam's voice stopped abruptly. Because at this moment, a red servant was standing beside him. Atlam's body was full of black and white swords, almost all over his body. Triple-linked crane wings altar. Shoo! Atlam's body was pierced by thousands of swords, and Caster's card user fell to the ground. What? Time. Ho! Atram stuttered. Then Atlam's body changed and turned into an automaton. A card printed with a white beard wearing a hood holding a book in one hand and a staff in the other hand was attached to it. So far, he didn't even make a move, and his real name wasn't exposed, but he was killed by Miya Shiro. Shiro Amiya picked up the card, walked to Wyrm's side, and handed it to Wyrm. Big brother, I keep having the feeling that this guy is bluffing. I feel that even without Big brother's help, I can still kill him. Wei Gong Shirang said with confidence. Wyrm thought that was true. With Shiro Amiya's talent, even without Wyrm's 5 years of training, Shiro Amiya could defeat almost all servants with that inexplicable hero spirit, Amiya, card. After all, he could cast projection magic, which could restrain other hero spirits' equipment. Amiya's noble phantasm was mixed with it. Rather than calling it projection magic, it was more like a fake gate of Babylon. It seems that this guy is just a dabbler. He didn't even notice my buff. Wyrm smiled and shook his head. Shiro Amiya was a little helpless, and then said, Brother, you're too abnormal. You can even simulate the skill of an assassin. Wyrm looked up, then reached out and touched his dragon horn headdress, and the dragon horn glowed, and then said, This is Kala's credit, I don't have so much time to study that. Yes, the reason why Wyrm could use his magic workshop and magical interference to block Shiro Amiya's buff was all thanks to Golden Green Kalas. After Wyrm removed Kalas's noble phantasm, Kalas woke up. As soon as she woke up, Kalas ignored Wyrm. Even if Wyrm asked her something, she answered Wyrm in a cold tone. It wasn't until Wyrm used some comforting means and some special methods that Kalas returned to her original state and helped Wyrm to analyze Assassin's skill. Master used very cruel means to make me surrender. I had no choice but to do this. Golden Green's dragon horn made a sound to defend itself. However, there was not the slightest grievance in its cold tone. It seemed to be mixed with a trace of happiness. Wei Gong Shiro, on the other hand, was not surprised. After all, his elder brother always appeared weak in front of his own magic dress, Miss Kelly. After all, Miss Kalas was also a very strict artificial elf. Shiro Amiya thought. Oh yeah, big brother, Shiro Amiya looked at Wyrm, how do we deal with this big guy? After that, Wyrm and Shiro Amiya looked at Berserker who was tied up. Don't worry, Kalas has already helped me think of a solution. Wyrm smiled mysteriously. The remaining personality of the Berserker card user seemed to feel a chill. Berserker's body that had stopped struggling began to struggle again, accompanied by a miserable roar. Wuming took out the nameless spellbook. Wuming placed the spellbook flat on his hand, and the spellbook automatically turned pages quickly and stopped at one of the pages. Dreamland. Wuming also drew several Lune runes in the air. As the Lune runes were drawn and the spell was recited, Hercules fell into silence. Dreamland was a 10th level emotional interference spell. It was originally a high-level spell used to restrict the enemy's movements. After being converted into reality, it became a spell that could make the enemy fall into an illusion created by the caster. In the illusion, the caster was God, everything. The victim would be controlled by the caster in the illusion, which would affect their physical body. However, the success rate of this spell was not high because the high-level players of Yggdrasil would equip some special defensive items or use some special defensive skills at the beginning to defend against these invisible side attacks. A series of defensive items or skills such as anti-intelligence exploration, anti-control, control time reduction, illusion break, and so on. And because of Berserker's madness, although the card user still had a trace of sanity, the success rate was still too low. Wuming used some wait for me blessing runes to increase the success rate of casting. It just so happened that Berserker had fallen into the illusion created by Wuming. Chapter 116. Wuming dragged the user of Berserker into an illusion. After a while, Berserker's body, which was bound by chains, began to glow. Then, Berserker began to shrink. Dozens of Enkidu also followed and tightly bound the shrunken figure. Just like that, a humanoid figure the size of an ordinary person who was tightly bound by Enkidu appeared in front of Wuming and Wei Gong Shiro. A card with a picture of a crazy berserker fell to the ground. Wuming picked up the card and looked at the figure tied by Enkidu. With a wave of his hand, all the Enkidu disappeared. The figure fell to the ground as if it had reached its limit and turned into an automaton. Wuming waved his hand, and the automaton disappeared. Sure enough, a mere automaton can't withstand the erosion of a rank card. Those automatons that were used by Julian could use rank cards because they had a human soul and personality. However, the rank card itself had the problem of eroding the user, not to mention Berserker was a servant with berserk skill. Therefore, after Berserker's card user deactivated his heroic spirit, he couldn't withstand the backlash of power and died automatically. After dinner, Wuming sat at his desk in his room. That desk was made by Wuming according to the desk in Nassarik. Wuming sat at the desk with several cards on it. There was the caster rank card printed with the old man, the assassin rank card printed with the killer, and the berserker rank card printed with the berserker rank card. As for the archer rank card, Wuming gave it to Shiro Amiya for long-term storage. In addition to Shiro Amiya's extra archer card, the opponent also has saber, lancer, archer, and rider card with a mount. Wuming put away those cards one by one. Sure enough, these are just probing, the opponent didn't use any of the 3 strongest knight rank cards. Please, Kalas. Wuming handed the 3 rank cards to Kalas, who was floating beside him. The 3 rank cards automatically floated beside the golden-green dragon horn headdress. Leave it to me, master. Kalas replied. Then, Wuming stood up. Since the opponent doesn't want to take the initiative, let's take the initiative. What do you want to do? Kalas asked. Of course, I want to use my noble phantasm. Kalas calculated the time. Moreover, I'm now a servant, how can I not use my noble phantasm? As he spoke, the corner of Wuming's mouth raised into a smile. The next day, early in the morning, before dawn, Wei Gong Shirlang woke up early. This was a habit left behind by Wuming's training. As soon as he opened the door, Shiro Amiya's pupils shrank. This was because a large amount of strange magic power had filled the entire Wei Gong residence. Just when Shiro Amiya was wondering why he didn't feel it in the room, Wuming's voice came into his ears. Shiro, come to the backyard. Then, Shiro Amiya sorted out his thoughts and went to the backyard. As soon as he entered the backyard, Shiro Amiya saw a lot of 3-meter-tall golems. Steel golems, plant golems, earth golems, elemental golems, and a large number of different types of golems. A large number of golems filled the huge courtyard of the Amiya mansion, almost filling the entire backyard. Moreover, there were still groups of golems coming out of the backyard's back door. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was standing on a 5-meter-tall magic puppet. Beside him was a strange magic staff that was constantly flashing with light. Beside the golem that Wu Ming was riding, a large purplish-black portal opened, and countless golems came out of it. "Brother, this is..." Shiro Amiya was puzzled. Wu Ming turned his head and looked at Shiro Amiya, who had just entered the backyard, and said with a smile, "How is it?" "My relic." Shiro Amiya said excitedly, "Is this your relic?" Wu Ming smiled, then jumped down from the golem and looked at Shiro Amiya. "That's the effect of my relic, the Staff of Anziergen. It can summon a large number of golems that I can control." As Wu Ming combined his relic, the Staff of Anziergen, with the magic workshop, the enchantment of the Staff of Anziergen resonated with Wu Ming's magic workshop. After all, they were enchantments, so it was understandable that they would merge. However, it took some time for the enchantment to merge with the magic workshop. When Wu Ming went to find the gemstone master, Wu Ming began to merge the two. Last night, Wu Ming found that the two were almost merged, and he could proceed to the next step. Wu Ming began to summon his army. The army in Nazarik's underground tomb was not to be underestimated. Because most of the troops in Nasarik were zombies, skeletons, vampires, slimes, and other monsters, Wu Ming did not summon them. Instead, he summoned Graham from the 4th layer of the underground lake, which was called a golem in this world. After Wu Ming communicated with Yair Abed in Nasarik, Yair Abed said that he wanted to protect His Holiness, and he had to come in person. However, Wu Ming refused because he could not meet the current conditions. Through Wu Ming's transformation, all the golems that Wu Ming summoned through the enchantment mutated. Originally, Nasarik only had ordinary golems and steel golems, but now Wu Ming summoned all kinds of golems. Not only did the level increase, but the quality of the golems also improved by leaps and bounds. For example, some special golems, such as the assassination golem, had a small body like a child, but it had the ability to transform. Although its defense was low, its attack power was very high. Just like Assassin, it was responsible for assassinating its master. Another example would be the 5-meter-tall special magic puppet that Wu Ming had ridden before. It was a special kind of magic puppet that specialized in defense. Its attack power and attack speed were quite low, but its defense was frighteningly high. Its body was specially made of tough soil that could automatically recover. Not only did it have super high magic resistance, but it also had a buffering effect on physical attacks. Even sharp blades could not pierce its body because the tough soil on the magic puppet would tightly clamp down on the sharp blades, expel them from the body, and repair themselves. The number of special magic puppets that Silent Cry could summon was the second most. Most of them were ordinary golems that were used as cannon fodder. And because of the enchantment effect of Wu Ming's Staff of Anziergong, those golems only appeared as magical blocks. In other words, those ordinary golems were all projections of Nazarik's golems, and those new golems were purely created by Wu Ming's magical power. If an ordinary magician were to create those golems without the help of external forces, even if he was given a lifetime, he would not be able to create all of them. After that, Wu Ming stopped creating golems with the Staff of Anziergong and closed the portal. One by one, the golems walked out of the backyard until only Wu Ming and Shiro Amiya were left. "Shiro, I will give Rider to you. Is that okay?" Wu Ming suddenly became serious. Shiro Amiya was stunned at first, then said firmly, "Ah. No problem, leave it to me, big brother." Wu Ming smiled happily. Chapter 117. A large number of magic puppets walked towards the enemy's stronghold that Wu Ming had found out from the mind of the Berserker card user. It was the center of the area that was destroyed 5 years ago. Because Wu Ming had cast a spell to disperse all idlers, no one panicked when they saw the magic puppets. When Atlam attacked the Amiya mansion, he had also used the spell on himself and Berserker. Otherwise, with Berserker's terrifying appearance, calling the police would have been considered a light punishment. Soon, almost all the magic puppets had arrived at the wasteland. Since Winterwood City was destroyed 5 years ago, the government had expanded the city on the other side of the wasteland. The huge crater on the other side might have been preserved by Aria's magic hint. Looking at the empty crater in the middle, Wyrm narrowed his eyes. According to Zelik and other information, Ainsworth had dabbled in all kinds of magic. However, he had an unparalleled talent in the replacement magic. As a basic magic, the replacement magic was just like the basic magic projection magic. It seemed very simple, but it was actually very mysterious. Shiro Amiya could now use his own power to project a D-grade relic. If he gave it his all, he could even project a C-grade relic. After all, the training that Wyrm had given Shiro Amiya for the past 5 years was not for nothing. In addition to lending Shiro Amiya high-level items to analyze, he also let Kalis teach Shiro Amiya. Moreover, the rank card that Shiro Amiya was using now was his own future. Even if there was a certain degree of erosion on his body, under Wyrm's control, the erosion became a factor that strengthened Shiro Amiya's ability. Let's talk about Julian Ainsworth. As far as Wyrm knew, Julian was one of the only 3 orphans who survived the Fourth Holy Grail War. The other 2 were the orphans of the Tsushima family and the orphans of Enban. When the Tong family and the Enosaka family gave up on the Holy Grail War, Julian did not want to give up, even though he knew that the world had been saved. After that, Julian began to store the souls and personalities of the magicians who died in the Holy Grail War into the automatons, letting these automatons fight each other. Those who survived in the end would be able to fulfill their wishes. Although some of these people knew that he was dead, there were also some who thought that he was still alive. Just like Atlam, who had been deceived by Julian all this time and had returned to the Netherworld in the end. Julian made use of these puppets that had long been under his control to create class cards for the Holy Grail War. The class card was the result of Julian transferring the power of the heroic spirits into the card using the substitution magic. It had to be said that Julian was a rare genius. Although the class card had the flaw of eroding the user, it was worth it to be able to obtain the power of the heroic spirits. However, the great Holy Grail of this world had been destroyed. Therefore, in order to fulfill his wish, Julian had to find an item that could replace the great Holy Grail. That was Mayu. Although it was still impossible to guess why Julian did not make a move in these 5 years or 5 years ago, it did not mean that he had given up on the Holy Grail War. After all, magicians were a group of lunatics, crazier than ordinary lunatics. Since the other party had come to test him, why would he not return the favor? Therefore, there was this scene of the magic puppets surrounding the huge pit. Wyrm and Shiro Amiya stood at the edge of the huge pit, fully armed and looking at the huge pit. Wyrm glanced at Shiro Amiya, and Shiro Amiya nodded. Then, Wyrm spoke. "The guests are here. Why is the master not showing himself?" His voice was not loud, but it spread throughout the huge pit. As if in response to Wyrm, a different space opened in the middle of the huge pit, and 5 figures walked out. Every figure had their own characteristics. The blue and white armored knight wore full body armor, and his appearance was steady. There were 2 horns on his helmet, and he held an invisible weapon in his hand. The European man with short blonde hair had a noble face. His whole body was wrapped in a special black high-density liquid, and only his head, hands, and part of his body were exposed. He held a red spear in his hand. The blindfolded man with black and purple hair exuded a decadent aura. He wore purple clothes and held a chain in his hand, and a mysterious cloth covered his eyes. He had 2 golden ponytails, and the right ponytail wore a golden horn-shaped accessory. His upper body only covered his chest, and his lower body was covered in golden armor with some red lines drawn on it. Although he was expressionless, he was full of vigor. Then, a young man with short black hair, blue eyes, and black-rimmed glasses with a gloomy face, wearing the uniform of the Suichuan Original Academy High School. Although his physique was thin and his appearance was ordinary, Wyrm did not pay attention to him because he was the one who walked in front. Yamato. Shiro Amiya clenched his fist. I really didn't expect that you would take the initiative to attack, Shiro Amiya, caster. No, I should call you Hyunryong-sama. Julian pushed his glasses and said with a gloomy face. Do you know my real name? Archer over there told you. Wyrm said with a smile. It's rare that Ligerite is unwilling to tell me your real name. It seems that she was influenced by the Hero King. Julian said with some irritation. Wyrm looked at the four figures behind Julian and said with some dissatisfaction, did you erase their feelings? Of course not, Master Xian Long. Although my opponent is you, all I did was rewrite their memories and make them my subordinates. Arya didn't seem to have any misgivings about these people, and directly revealed the truth. Even if Julian said so, the others did not respond at all, as if they were really Julian's men. So, what do you want to do, Julian Ainsworth? Hearing this, Shiro Amiya's eyes were also shocked and looked at Julian. Julian's mouth curved and made a burst of laughter. Of course, it's to save mankind, Hyunryong-sama. Julian said with some madness. Don't you think mankind needs to be saved? The great sage who guides the Uruk humans. I don't think mankind needs to be saved, I only think mankind needs to be guided. Wyrm said indifferently. And do you really think a mere Holy Grail war can save the world, Julian Ainsworth? Don't talk nonsense. Julian roared, then said, don't you also know that the real Holy Grail can fulfill this wish? Hyunryong. Wyrm narrowed his eyes. Wyrm naturally knew that Meiyu could save mankind, but Wyrm would not sacrifice Meiyu. The premise was that this world had already been saved by Zelik, so mankind was no longer in danger. Moreover, Wyrm was not like those who would sacrifice their own important people to save the world. Even if he had to sacrifice himself, Wyrm would not sacrifice others. So what? Hearing Wyrm's words, Julian calmed down. Then, prepare to be crushed by me. Chapter 118. Following Julian's words, the four subordinates beside him who had used cards rushed toward Wyrm. This was also like an opportunity, and the large number of magic puppets surrounding Ainsworth began to move. Wyrm held the staff of Ainsworth in his hand and tapped the ground lightly with the tip of the staff. Two small teleportation portals that could only allow one person to pass through opened. A woman and an old man walked out of the portals. The woman was wearing a purplish-black cake dress. Her entire body was wrapped in clothes, only her face and hands were exposed. Her scarlet eyes exuded a dangerous aura, and her white corpse-like skin was extremely horrifying. The old man was wearing a black and white butler's suit with gloves on both hands and black leather shoes on his feet. His hair and beard were white. Although his face was old, his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. The butler's suit could not hide his muscular body, which gave people a sense of security. The two of them were Shadia Bradfriend and Sebastian Dean, who had been kept in the staff of Ainsworth by Wyrm. Master Wyrm. The two of them knelt on one knee and saluted Wyrm. Get up, Shadia, Sebastian. Wyrm gestured for them to get up. After Shadia and Sebastian stood up, Shiro Amiya greeted them. Ms. Shadia, Mr. Sebastian, Shiro Amiya greeted them politely. His attitude was very respectful. It was obvious that they had met before. Ah. Isn't this brother Shiro? I didn't expect you to have grown so big. Shadia looked at Shiro Amiya with a graceful posture and a joyful expression. Long time no see, Shiro. Sebastian was easygoing and greeted Shiro Amiya. Due to the fact that Wyrm had transformed into a follower, his body and his noble phantasm were all made of mana, including the staff of Ains Urgong. The real staff of Anzi Urgan was currently resting in the Dragonist relic on Wyrm's root dragon. In other words, Shadia and Sebastian were also in the staff of Ainsworth. To Wu Ming, who was absorbing energy from the source, not only did it improve his physical condition, but it also improved his noble relics, including Zaisha and Sebastian, who were inside his noble relic, the staff of Anziwergong. 5 years ago, Wu Ming summoned Shadia and Sebastian as servants. After all, Wu Ming didn't want to destroy their roots' sublimation, so he summoned their consciousness in the form of servants. Wu Ming confirmed their status. Wu Ming believed that after their roots' sublimation, they would have a qualitative leap. Later, Wu Ming deliberately let Sebastian see the scene when Shiro Amiya was training himself. Therefore, Sebastian proposed to guide Shiro Amiya, and Wu Ming agreed with a smile. After a period of time, because the two of them wanted to absorb more quickly, Wu Ming removed their servant status and let their consciousness return to their roots, so that they could continue to sleep, so that they could improve better. Wu Ming swiped his finger in the air, and some information was sent to Shadia and Sebastian's mind. Shadia, Sebastian, I'll leave the armored knight and the spearman to you two. Don't embarrass me. Wu Ming ordered. Yes. Wu Ming, Sama. The two replied. Then, Wu Ming looked at Shiro Amiya and said, I'll leave the armored knight to you, is that okay? Shiro Amiya projected 2 swords and walked forward. Leave it to me, big brother. Remember, don't let him remove that blindfold. It doesn't look simple. Understood. Then, Wu Ming looked at Angelica, who was walking toward him, and smiled as if he was reminiscing. Then, he said, you really look like Gil. Of course, Wu Ming was referring to the female Gilgamesh that he had taught. Although I don't want to fight with you, this is Master Julian's order after all. I'm sorry. Angelica apologized first, then said, let me see what you're really capable of, Hero King's mentor, Hyunryong. After that, a large number of golden ripples appeared behind Angelica, and countless noble artifacts appeared. These are all grade B to grade A noble artifacts, right? You really think highly of me. Wu Ming smiled, then raised the staff of Ain's Ergong in his hand. A large number of black and purple holes also appeared behind Wu Ming, and a large number of giant black bone spears gradually appeared from them. Otherwise, I don't have the confidence to defeat you. After Angelica finished speaking, she waved her hand, and countless noble artifacts burst out toward Wu Ming. It seems that you are very confident, then come and try. The staff of Ain's Ergong in Wu Ming's hand flashed, and Wu Ming shouted, magic strength, bone spear, altar. Countless sharp black bone spears burst out toward Angelica. Just like the confrontation between good and evil, the black bone spears and the golden noble artifacts collided with each other, making a thunderous sound. The explosion filled the surroundings of the two, and the battlefield was instantly filled with smoke and dust. Summon Primal Fire Elemental. As the spell was chanted, a huge flame spirit rushed out of the smoke and rushed toward Angelica. Poof! With a thunderbolt, the giant flame sprite was penetrated and disappeared. Angelica was holding a huge spiral sword, and there was still a trace of lightning left on the sword. Angelica let go of her hand, and the spiral sword turned into a golden light and disappeared, returning to the golden ripple. Well done, I don't know if you inherited Hero King's martial arts. Wu Ming said with a smile. Then, Wu Ming's figure slowly disappeared like a phantom. Angelica's eyes narrowed, and she quickly stretched out her hand. A huge shield formed by 7 purple petals appeared in Angelica's hand. Wu Ming held a spear and stabbed the shield fiercely. The green energy eroded the shield, and the petals on the shield disappeared one by one. Angelica jumped back, and the purple petal shield shattered. Wu Ming put the white spear behind his back and looked at Angelica with a smile. Good vigilance. Angelica looked at Wu Ming and said coldly, if you didn't remove the phantom in advance, you might have hurt me. However, Wu Ming just smiled slightly, even so, I can hurt you, my child. As soon as he finished speaking, a green thorny vine suddenly appeared in front of Angelica and rushed toward Angelica's head. Angelica abruptly dodged, avoiding this fatal blow. Angelica felt a trace of pain on her cheek and looked at the spear on Wu Ming's back. The spear was sneaking into the ground along Wu Ming's heel. This thorny vine was one of the spear's abilities. Wu Ming looked at Angelica, whose cheek was bleeding, and smiled even more brightly. See, didn't you get hurt? At this moment, Angelica looked at Wu Ming more cautiously. Chapter 119. On the other side, Satya looked at the spearman in front of her, recalling the information Wu Ming gave her. The power in this user's heroic spirit card comes from Cuchulainn, the son of sun god Rugr in Celtic mythology. Not only does he have powerful martial arts skills, but he also has a magic spear that will penetrate his heart. After all, that was Cuchulainn, Wu Ming's old opponent. How could Wu Ming not know that magic spear? In addition, he also has the powerful original 18 Lune. Although it's affected by his rank, it doesn't mean that he can't use it. If it's you, Satya, I believe it won't be difficult to deal with him. Recalling the words that Wu Ming left in her mind, Satya blushed and murmured, Wu Ming, Sama, but even so, Satya didn't let down her guard against the enemy. When they were summoned here, Wu Ming gave Satya and Sebastian some knowledge about this world, and their magic was called magic in this world. About servants, heroic spirits, the cause and effect of the Holy Grail War, Wu Ming's fight with Julian, and everything that Wu Ming thought was necessary. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Kenneth Elmaroy Akibalid, one of the 12 Lords of the Clock Tower. Mr. Akibalid, I'm Satya Bradford. By the way, a mere human is not qualified to be called a lord. Only a great supreme can be called a lord. After hearing Satya's words, Kenneth narrowed his eyes and said, I didn't expect my opponent to be a beautiful inhuman lady. It's a pity. It seems that your luck isn't very good. Kenneth held the red magic spear in his hand, and the moon spirit essence on his body kept surging. Aw, you're really rude. I really want to catch you and torture you, but since Wu Ming, Sama told me not to embarrass him, I can only kill you. After saying that, she put on her armor. A pinkish-purple armor covered her body, and white swan wings fluttered behind her back. The armor was just like the cake dress that Satya wore, covering every part of her body except for her face. This time, it covered her entire body. Kenneth looked at the strange spear in Satya's hand and said elegantly, It's really fate. I didn't expect you to also use a spear. Satya held the pike and said disdainfully, Please don't compare my pike with your tattered wooden stick. This is a divine artifact bestowed upon me by the Honorable Supreme. Although Kenneth didn't understand what Satya was talking about, it didn't affect him. Then, please prepare for death, Miss Satya. As Nazarik's strongest one-on-one fighter, Satya was still very strong in close combat, even though her combat ability was based on data. Because Kenneth had obtained Cuchulainn's martial arts, he was now locked in battle with Zaisha. After a while, the two separated. Your turtle shell is really difficult to deal with, Satya said with a smile. It's good that you know. This is an absolute defense that none of your items have, Kenneth said proudly. I've decided, I'll kill you. Satya flew into the sky. Vermilion Nova. A large flame burned toward Kenneth. The viscous black liquid on Kenneth's body squirmed and formed a shield in front of Kenneth. Satya took advantage of the flame and rushed toward Kenneth. Kenneth made a feint and dodged Satya's attack. Then he rushed forward, and the two began to fight in close combat again. On the other side, Sebastian also recalled the memory we imparted to him. The armored knight's real name is King Arthur. Apart from his armor, his most powerful weapon is the invisible holy sword. After all, Wu Ming was the silver dragon that once protected Britain, and King Arthur was raised by Wu Ming himself. Thinking about the holy sword of star that was hidden by the wind, Wu Ming spent more time in Britain than in other worlds. Therefore, for King Arthur, Wu Ming was very familiar with it. Because of the blessing of the elves, King Arthur has the power to control the wind. King Arthur used this power on his weapon to form an invisible weapon. In addition, King Arthur's holy sword can also emit the light of the stars that can destroy almost everything. When fighting King Arthur, try not to distance yourself from him. Don't give him time to breathe. It's best to end the battle quickly and kill him in one blow. Sebastian walked toward the armored man with his hands behind his back. The armored man was Julian's father, Zachary Ainsworth. Because Zachary died in the Fourth Holy Grail War, he was resurrected by Julian using replacement magic. Because he was his father, Julian gave the best saber rank card to Zachary, turning him into the legendary King Arthur. Zachary didn't finish his words. His expression couldn't be seen because he was wearing a helmet. Zachary rushed towards Sebastian. He seemed to be holding something in his hand as he slashed at Sebastian. Clang! The sound of metal colliding could be heard. Sebastian raised his arm and blocked Zachary's slash with his rank card. Upon closer inspection, the sleeves of Sebastian's arm that blocked Zachary's slash were covered with dragon scales. Originally, Sebastian was a draken, and he used magic to strengthen his body. Now, I, Sebastian, am able to receive King Arthur's sacred star sword. It's a pity that I have to defeat you here. After saying that, the old man's eyes stared at Zachary like a hunting eagle. Then, he clenched his fist and shot it towards Zachary. Zachary didn't react in time and was sent flying by the punch. Sebastian wiped his fist and put his hands behind his back again. Sir, if you're not serious, you won't be able to fight against me, Sebastian suggested kindly. Zachary seemed to understand. He held his sword with both hands and maintained a certain posture. Sebastian's eyes lit up. Then, he put his hands in front of him and clenched them into fists. The muscular old man assumed a special fighting posture. Come! Both sides were on the verge of breaking out. On the other side, Julian kept releasing replacement magic, destroying one magic puppet after another. It was especially strenuous to destroy those strange-looking magic puppets. After a while, Julian became impatient. Erica, release all the remaining black mud from the Fourth Holy Grail War. As you wish. Chapter 120. Zentong Yenye was weak but frantically attacking the marionette around him, and he looked like berserker. Give, back, to me. Zentong Yenye roared and kept swinging the chain in his hand. Shiro Amiya dodged nimbly and remembered what he said to him before. Senpai, if you meet my uncle Zentong Yenye, please kill him. Shiro Amiya looked at Sakura Madu and asked, because your uncle, yes, my uncle, like my brother, died as early as the Fourth Holy Grail War. Now he is just a puppet who acts for his own ideas. Please release him, senpai, I will be grateful. I know, don't worry, Sakura. After that, Sakura Madu told Shiro Amiya about Zentong Yenye's appearance. It seems that you are Zentong Yenye. Wuming said. Give. Back, to me. Zentong Yenye's roar was the only response to Shiro Amiya. Has it already reached this point? What a pity. Wei Gongshi closed his eyes. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes. Let me release you for Sakura, Zentong Yenye. As if because he heard Sakura Madu's name, Zentong Yenye's movements were sluggish. Shiro Amiya threw a lot of Ganjiang Moi into the air. Shiro Amiya rushed to Zentong Yenye's side. Roar! Zentong Yenye reacted and wanted to release his magic eye immediately. He held the chain in his right hand and grabbed the blindfold in his left hand, and muttered, Self-seal, Dark Temple, Breaker Gorgon. Zentong Yenye took off the blindfold. Shiro Amiya looked at Zentong Yenye's indifferent eyes, and he felt a chill in his heart. After that, Shiro Amiya felt that he could no longer move. Wei Gong Shiro didn't struggle, and he said faintly, Triple link crane wings alter. Puchi puchi puchi, the sound of numerous sharp blades stabbing into flesh could be heard. Tong Yenye's body was pierced full of black and white blades. He let out a mournful howl. Large amounts of blood flowed down from Tong Yenye's body. Give me back. Sakura. Jian Tong Yenya collapsed and turned into an automaton. Gradually, Shiro Amiya felt that his body could move again. Then, he walked towards the robot and picked up the card with the writer's name printed on it. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of Ing." Zaisha and Kenneth kept on fighting, exchanging blows. However, Zaisha's body was full of wounds. Although Zaisha had a pipette and could recover her HP by attacking the enemy, Kenneth had the Moon Essence Potion that could automatically defend himself. Moreover, Zaisha was a computer-generated NPC. Not to mention that her attack pattern was basically fixed, Zaisha basically did not change much. After all, it was always the players who gave the orders. NPCs did not need to think for themselves and only needed to follow orders. Although Zaisha and other NPCs had begun to adapt to the situation and draw inferences from one case, Zaisha was still too inexperienced compared to Cuculin, who had obtained the heroic spirit's power. "My lady, it seems that it's time to decide the outcome." Kenneth fainted and retreated far away. "TSK. Remove your tortoise shell if you have the ability," Zaisha said a little grumpily. Every time she used magic, Kenneth could always dodge it nimbly. Even if it was a sure-hit spell, Kenneth could still resist it. Especially that Moon Essence Potion, it was simply too overpowered. "Take this, Miss Vampire." Kenneth held the spear with one hand and placed it beside his body. The scarlet magic spear emitted a thick aura of death. Could this be the noble artifact liberation that Lord Wuming mentioned? Zaisha said warily when she sensed the thick aura of death. "Gay Balg, spear of piercing death." Kenneth threw the magic spear with all his might. This feeling of danger. Zaisha suddenly flew into the sky in an attempt to dodge the spear. The magic spear was like a maggot that followed closely behind Zaisha. "Damn it!" Zaisha cursed inwardly. Then, Zaisha's body emitted a trace of light. Then, under Kenneth's gaze, Zaisha was pierced by the scarlet magic spear and fell to the ground. Kenneth withdrew the magic spear and walked in the direction where Zaisha had fallen. Looking at Zaisha, who was still alive on the ground, Kenneth could not help but sigh. "Looks like you're a vampire at the level of the 27th ancestor. What a pity. If you could live a little longer, you might be able to evolve." Zaisha was lying on the ground in a pool of blood. Blood flowed from the corner of Zaisha's mouth as she looked at Kenneth with a smile. "Are you so sure that you've won?" Kenneth seemed to have discovered something. His eyes shrank suddenly, and he quickly mobilized the moon marrow essence to defend his back. "Don't even think about it." "Eye of the sky." Zaisha roared and launched the mental interference magic that she learned from Wuming. Kenneth suddenly fell into a trance, and the movement of the moon marrow essence also slowed down. The moon marrow spirit liquid could defend and attack on its own. It could also be controlled by the user. Kenneth felt that there was no need to defend his back. Moreover, he had used up a lot of moon marrow spirit liquid during the battle. Therefore, Kenneth used all of his moon marrow spirit liquid to defend his front. At the moment when Moon Marrow Essence's defense speed was reduced, the white spear pierced through Kenneth's chest, leaving a huge hole in Kenneth's chest. Kenneth fell to the ground with lifeless eyes and turned into a puppet. Zaisha stood up slowly, and her injuries were basically healed at this moment. "It's really embarrassing. It seems that I have to complete the sublimation as soon as possible." Yes, Zaisha's true ancestor's body has begun to sublimate. Although Zaisha's heart was destroyed before, she could still survive, but she didn't have the ability to recover so quickly. After all, even if Zaisha and others were transformed into real existences, judging whether they were alive or not still depended on their health bar. As long as the health bar was not empty, Zaisha would not die, but if her heart was destroyed, her health bar would be reduced to 1/3, and she would fall into a weakened state. Zaisha believed that as long as she could sublimate her root, she would be able to eliminate all the disadvantages of being controlled by the game system. Of course, Sebastian was the same, and at this moment, Sebastian was even more sublimated than Zaisha. Looking at Sebastian, who had revealed his half-dragon form, Zachary didn't speak as usual, but it could be seen from his actions that Zachary was struggling to deal with Sebastian at this moment. Sebastian's head turned into a terrifying dragon head, his hands turned into dragon claws, his white gloves have long been destroyed, and a black tail grew out of his back. At this moment, the two were locked in a fierce battle. No, it was Zachary who couldn't separate. Chapter 121. It's a pity that I can't show up in the same form as Supreme Venerables, Seabass said while fighting with Zachary. Yes, at this moment, Seabass could already transform into a dragon, but it was a defective dragon subspecies. Because Sebastian and Wu Ming were of the same race, Wu Ming used his main body to absorb power while Sebastian was affected by Wu Ming, greatly increasing the degree of his sublimation. Compared to Satya, who had yet to fully sublimate, Sebastian could be said to have almost completed his sublimation. If one were to ask who the strongest player in Nasarick was, it probably wouldn't be the character hidden by the Ains Wugong players, but the current Sebastian. It's about time. It's time to end this, Sebastian said in a serious tone. Zachary was also nervous. He instantly released his magical power and blasted Seabass away, and he quickly retreated with the force of the impact. Zachary held the sword with both hands and pointed the hidden weapon in his hand forward. After Seabass rushed to his side, Zachary suddenly thrust forward, and a large amount of magical power formed a storm vortex and rushed toward Seabass. Seabass covered his head with both hands, resisting the storm that contained a large amount of magical power. This was the spare card used by Zachary. With the power of King Arthur, he released the wind enchantment that was wrapped around the sacred sword and turned it into a long-range weapon that could be used to wipe out the enemy, the wind hammer. Although it was a one-time-use noble phantasm, that was not Zachary's purpose. The holy sword revealed itself after the wind barrier was removed, and the gorgeous sword body distorted the sunlight. Zachary held the sword with both hands and raised it above his head, and the light began to gather. Excalibur. Then, as Zachary shouted the noble phantasm's true name, a huge light rushed toward Seabass, who was affected by strike air. The light that destroyed everything in front of it hit everything in front of it. Whether it was the ground, trees, or anything else, they were all covered by the huge light. Because Wu Ming sent a large number of puppets were destroyed by this attack. Fortunately, the noble phantasm was aimed at the mountain forest. If it was aimed at the city, not many people in the city would survive. Soon, the light disappeared, leaving behind traces of reclamation on the ground. The puppets that originally surrounded Ain's Balin were destroyed. Zachary gasped for breath. Because of Julian's explanation, Zachary did not underestimate the old man sent by Wu Ming. Sure enough, the old man was a draken. To be safe, Zachary deliberately used strike air to create the illusion that Seabass's noble phantasm was his strongest noble phantasm, and then used it in an instant to defeat his opponent. In one fell swoop. Because of Sebastian's troublesome nature, Zachary had used up almost all of his remaining magic power. Noble phantasm's noble phantasm. Just when Zachary thought that he had defeated Seabass, a sense of danger rose in his heart. Zachary immediately raised his sword and slashed backward. However, there was a slash sound. Both of Zachary's hands were broken, and he was sent flying into the air. Together with the sacred sword, he fell to the ground. Zachary retreated somewhat pathetically, still not saying a word. Zachary looked at Seabass, who was behind him. Seabass was wearing a black butler suit with white gloves on his hands. His hands were behind his back as he looked at Zachary. What a pity. Fortunately, I have the knowledge that Master Wu Ming gave me. I almost got hit by the sacred star sword, Seabass said politely. Sebastian said slowly and politely as he patted the dust off his clothes. As Wu Ming had told Seabass about the characteristics of Excalibur, Seabass could easily tell that Zachary did not want to use Excalibur. With such awareness, it was impossible for Seabass to be hit. Sebastian had already calculated the range of the attack. However, he was afraid that the range of the attack would be too large, so he deliberately moved further away. If not for that, he would have been hit by Excalibur. This was no joke. This was a star-sacred sword, a weapon made by God. At this moment, Sebastian was simply unable to withstand such a powerful Excalibur. Any last words? Seabass asked politely. Zachary remained silent. After a while, he said, "Please save my son. Please." Understood. I'll report to Master Wuming. I believe that with Master Wuming's magnanimity, he won't reject the agreement between you and me. Please rest in peace. As soon as Seabass finished speaking, Zachary's vision turned black. Then, Zachary lost his sight, followed by all his senses. Seabass wiped his bloody gloves and looked at the headless automaton on the ground. He picked up the card on the automaton. Is this, a knight with a sword? Master Wuming said that I need this card. I'll keep it first. While the other battles were about to end, the battle between Wuming and Angelica was almost over. At that moment, the two were no longer shooting at each other, but fighting in close combat. Angelica was using the weapons in her treasury flexibly, while Wuming was using a spear. The two were locked in a fight, but interestingly, the place where the two fought had a lot of green plants. Obviously, this was the effect of the divine spear Yggdrasil and the mythological beast Funbaba. I didn't expect you to be able to use the ability of a lancer as a caster. Angelica frowned and said. I'm a caster. Isn't it good to use magic to enhance strength and speed? Also, don't forget that I'm your mentor. How can I forget the martial arts I taught you? Although she said so, the martial arts used by Angelica and Wuming were not similar. Perhaps it was because of the different world. Boom! Hearing the sound, the two of them looked in the direction of the huge golden light pillar. Excalibur. Then Wuming turned his head to Angelica. It seems that the other battles are almost over. It seems that our battle is about to end. Wuming stood opposite Angelica with a spear in his hand and said with a smile. What nonsense are you talking about? We're tied now, and you're still talking nonsense. Angelica reprimanded. In response, Wuming just smiled faintly. Is that so? Do you really think so, Angelica? Enkidu. Enkidu. Chapter 122. Countless silver-white chains burst out from the golden ripples behind Wuming and Angelica. The chains wrapped around Wuming and Angelica were hung up. Both of them used the same method to hang each other up in the same posture. Wuming was tied up tightly by Enkidu because he didn't think about dodging at all. Angelica was also tied up tightly by Enkidu because she didn't think about dodging. Wuming, who was tied up in the air, looked at Angelica with a smile and said, "It seems that we are thinking of the same thing." Because Silent Wonder's caster form and Angelica's card form, Archer Gilgamesh, had a lot of divinity, and the extremely rare Enkidu was the biggest nemesis of the two of them. Angelica expressed her dissatisfaction with Wuming's statement. She frowned and said, "You really dare to use a fake, Hyunryong." Those Enkidu were the fake Enkidu that Wuming used on the Berserker Hercules card user. Wuming used Create Advanced Item to create a fake that was comparable to the real thing. Even if it was comparable to the real thing, a fake was a fake, and it could be judged by its aura. And because Wuming released more than one Enkidu, Angelica was more certain that Wuming used a fake. For Angelica, who didn't like and even hated fakes, it would undoubtedly irritate her. Wuming was interested in Angelica's dissatisfaction. It seems that you and Gil hate fakes very much. Wuming recalled the cute Gil and couldn't help but sigh. So what do you want to do, Angelica Ainsworth? Angelica was distressed by Rosin's words. Because Angelica couldn't cause effective damage to Wuming at all. It was true that Archer Gilgamesh's card could be said to be invincible against other servants, but it was too weak against Wuming. After all, Wuming was the person who taught the famous hero King Gilgamesh. Although they were not in the same world, it was much easier to deal with his disciple than to deal with other unknown servants. What's more, Wu Ming had the spirit of Ain's old gown, which stored a lot of powerful magic, and the nameless spellbook, which stored all the magic in the other world. Wu Ming was no weaker than Gilgamesh in terms of artillery bombardment. After all, with Gilgamesh's character, she would not remember all the real names of noble phantasm. At most, she would remember the real names of 5 or 6 noble phantasms. Wu Ming guessed it right. Angelica indeed only knew the real names of a few noble phantasms. That had a great impact on Angelica. As a result, in addition to using noble phantasms, Angelica could only use melee and noble phantasm to attack. In terms of melee, Angelica couldn't gain the slightest advantage against Wu Ming. Not to mention that Wu Ming was the disciple of the Lord of the Demon Realm, Wu Ming's experience over the years was enough to defeat Angelica. After all, Wu Ming was also known as the strongest knight of the Round Table by virtue of his martial arts. If Noble Phantasm was released, Wu Ming would also release his Noble Phantasm to fight against her. With the support of a huge amount of magic, Wu Ming's mythical Yggdrasil was not something that any servant could fight against. Then, I'll take out a weapon that you can't fight against. Angelica shouted. Then, a golden ripple appeared behind her. However, the speed of the golden ripple was a little slow. Moreover, the number of noble phantasms that appeared in the golden ripple was obviously reduced. There were only a few grade A noble phantasms. It was obvious that the Enkidu created by Silent Wonder was starting to take effect. It was starting to suppress Angelica's magic power. Clang, clang, clang. Angelica fell to the ground with the sound of the chains breaking. Wu Ming was the same. The sacred lance in his hand floated in the air and automatically moved. It penetrated the chains on Wu Ming's body. Wu Ming also fell to the ground. After all, Enkidu was not a powerful weapon in the first place. It was just an ability that had a strong binding effect on divine enemies. Even for those servants who had high strength but did not have divine attributes, as long as they used their strength, they could break it. Then, a golden ripple appeared beside Angelica, and the hilt of a sword was revealed. The hilt was golden, and there was a strange sword guard on the upper part of the hilt. Angelica pulled hard, and a sword that looked like a sword appeared in Angelica's hand. Other than the body of the sword, the rest of the sword was normal. Only the body of the sword was a black cylindrical object. There were 3 parts of the black cylindrical object. The 3 parts were pieced together to form a long tube. There were very red patterns engraved on it, and it looked very mysterious. Is this the Enkidu sword? Wu Ming's expression became serious. As the mentor of the hero king, Gilgamesh, Wu Ming naturally knew about the legendary sword that could split heaven and earth apart, the Enkidu sword. Although it was a name given by Gilgamesh, the sword that did not look like a sword at all lived up to its name. Ea was a god that existed before the creation of heaven and earth in Mesopotamia's mythological system. Needless to say, the function of the sword was needless to say. Angelica held the Enkidu sword high, and the 3 cylindrical blades began to rotate separately. As they rotated, there were traces of red air blades. There were more and more air blades, and they were getting bigger and bigger until they rushed to the sky and parted the clouds. Looking at the majestic huge tornado, Wu Ming, who knew how powerful the weapon was, began to prepare to release the noble phantasm. Ancient and eternal primordial dragon, show yourself and save the world once more. As the noble phantasm was released, a large amount of platinum mist appeared around Wu Ming. Angelica held the Enkidu sword in one hand and focused her gaze. Take this attack. Hyunryong. Enkidu sword. Enkidu sword. Heaven Age. A huge red tornado descended from the sky, rushing towards Wu Ming. Wherever it passed, there were cracks in the space. Some of them even had gaps in the space, revealing mysterious black holes. The platinum mist surged wildly and spread to the surroundings. The mist completely blocked Wu Ming's body, and one could vaguely see a black shadow in the platinum mist. The red sword aura came violently, and the white mist spread quietly. Soon, the two of them collided. The seemingly gentle mist exploded with unimaginable toughness. The red sword aura only managed to break through a small part of it before it was blocked by the white mist. What? Angelica stared at the scene in disbelief. Chapter 123. Angelica looked at the unusual white mist and asked in doubt. What the hell is this? How can it resist EA's attack? Facing Angelica's surprised and doubtful voice, a mute voice sounded from the white mist. This is naturally my noble phantasm, Angelica. Don't think that I can only use magic because I'm a caster. This is my real body. Yes, Wuming's noble phantasm was to summon his real body. Because he summoned his real body as a servant, Wuming's root dragon's blessing temporarily lost its effect. After all, it was called his real body. At best, it was just a projection of Wuming's real body. Moreover, the modern world of the shaped moon had the ability to automatically repair things that should not exist, such as fantasy breeds. As a result, once Silent Cry summoned his entire body or summoned part of his body for too long, there was a high chance that he would be attacked by the world itself. Because Wuming had been hurt by the world once, this time Wuming learned his lesson and only summoned part of his body. That led to the creation of the Platinum Mist. The Platinum Mist was a part of Wuming. That was the ultra-low-density decomposition state of Wuming's body. Through Wuming's decomposition of his body, which could be regarded as indestructible, combined with the skill Holy Breath, it formed the platinum glowing mist. From another point of view, it could be said that the mist was equivalent to Wuming's scales. It stood to reason that even so, it shouldn't be able to resist Wuming's ultimate release, but it couldn't resist Wuming's skill. Formation creation, EXA's a magician, he could create a terrain that was advantageous to him. Formation creation, EXA's a magician, he could create a terrain that was advantageous to him in a short time. As long as there were materials, he could even create a shrine that was once enshrined. Item creation, EXE could make magical items. There was a magic book that contained all the magic in a certain world, and with the skill Otherworld Magic, he could make all the items in a certain world. Through the formation, Wuming could transform his current land into a suitable place for himself. Through the creation of the item, Wuming could add the world protection of this item, Fog, to the world item. Wuming had used Yggdrasil to fight with Angelica before. The damage he had caused on the land was used as an anchor point to build his base. That was how Wuming was able to build the Uruk land the moment he released his relic. It was also due to the fact that Wuming was able to add the protection of a world-class item to his own items and relic. Just like that, the platinum-colored mist, which had been slightly weaker before, became an existence similar to an inherent barrier under these conditions. It was on par with the sword chi unleashed by the Guili sword. After all, the only way to defend against a world-defying relic was to offset the damage of the same level or use a relic of the same level. Wuming only knew one relic of the same level, and that was Artoria, King Arthur's relic Avalon. As an existence that could make the holder immortal, unharmed, and indestructible, Avalon was indeed an X-level relic, and it was a barrier relic that was specifically designed to deal with world-defying relic like the Guili sword. The Guili sword did not deal with the inherent barrier, but the world itself. As a barrier relic, Avalon just happened to counter the Guili sword. After all, in the world of the moon, defense was stronger than attack, and it was more than twice as strong. Wuming only knew a few relic of the same level. One of his master Skaha's abilities could open the gate of the kingdom of death and suck things in. Anyone or anything that was not approved by Skaha would lose their life as soon as they entered the gate of the kingdom of death. Other than Wuming, even Cuchulain had only entered the kingdom of death with Skaha's approval. For example, the sword chi unleashed by the Guili sword would turn into nothingness as soon as it was sucked into the gate of the kingdom of death. There was also Artoria's Excalibur. Wuming believed that as long as the seal on the Excalibur was completely lifted, the sword would definitely be able to resist the Guili sword. The relic that Wu Ming was using at the moment, Wu Ming's body could be said to be an offensive relic, but it could also be said to be a defensive relic. As a dragon that was immune to time and space, the Guili sword was nothing to him. Of course, Wu Ming's relic of the caster class did not have any resistance to time and space. Even so, the nature of Wu Ming's bones would not change, and he could still have a slight effect on a relic like the Guili sword. Wu Ming took advantage of this effect and amplified it by mixing it with the protection of the world to resist the Guili sword. Wu Ming controlled the white mist to push forward. From time to time, parts of the white dragon's body would appear in the white mist. Sometimes the dragon's claws, sometimes the dragon's tail, sometimes the dragon's horns, and sometimes the dragon's back would appear. In this way, Angelica did her best to release her mana, but she still could not stop the white mist from pushing forward. She knew that as long as the white mist wrapped around her, she would definitely be killed by Wu Ming. After all, the dragon's shadow that kept appearing in the mist was not to be trifled with. At this moment, from the center of the huge pit, where Julian was surrounded by Wu Ming's magic puppets, a large amount of mana erupted. A large amount of black mist was advancing in all directions. Even Wu Ming could feel that the black mist was not friendly. Wu Ming stopped the white mist from pushing forward, and Angelica subconsciously removed the Guili sword's wind blade. As for Shiro Amiya, Sebastian, and Satya, who had already completed their mission, they hurriedly retreated. Wu Ming shrank the white mist to a range of 10 meters and lifted Wu Ming into the sky. Wu Ming did not pay attention to Angelica, who had already retreated. After all, if he could defeat her once, he could defeat her countless times. Wu Ming started observing the black mist and discovered that it was the same thing that destroyed the winter wood when Wu Ming had just arrived in this world. So this is a product of the Ainsworth family. Wu Ming frowned. Just as Wu Ming was about to use the method he had used to seal the black mist, something incredible appeared behind the black mist. Black sludge crazily rushed over. It was a large amount of mana condensed into a solid, formless, but dense mana essence. However, its black color and crazy aura were truly unflattering. Just as the black mud approached Wu Ming sensed something familiar. This is... Chapter 124. The large amount of black mud in front of Wu Ming gave Wu Ming a familiar feeling and aura. It was the aura of a major origin. It was the origin of the minor origin where Wu Ming's main body was located, the place where Wu Ming was born. Although Wu Ming had never seen a major origin and could not understand why there was such a thing in the origin, it did not mean that Wu Ming did not recognize it. As if it was filled with resistance and disgust, Wu Ming frowned as he looked at the incoming black mud. Ha 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 ha, Hyunryong, let's see how you block it. Julian stood in the black mud and laughed maniacally as he looked at Wu Ming. At that moment, Julian was standing on a platform made of black mud, looking at Wu Ming and laughing without restraint. Tisk, Wu Ming spat unhappily. For some reason, Wu Ming just did not like the black mud that had the aura of his hometown. It was as if it was an innate resistance, as if it was a natural enemy. That was Wu Ming's evaluation of the black mud. Sorry for the trouble. Wu Ming rode the white mist and descended from the sky to the ground without black mud, meeting with Shiro Amiya and the others. Lord Wu Ming. Satya and Sebastian handed the class cards they had obtained from the water to Wu Ming. Wu Ming put away Saber and Lancer's class cards, then Wu Ming said to the two of them, "Thank you for your hard work." "Thank you for your hard work. Zaisha, Sebastian, go back and rest." "Not at all. I've completed the mission given to me by Lord Wu Ming in such a sorry state. I've sinned." Satya became serious, which was rare for her. "Although I wasn't in a difficult situation, I was unable to quickly defeat the opponent assigned to me by Sir Wu Ming." "Please punish me, Sir Wu Ming," Sebastian said. Wu Ming chuckled and shook his head. "You guys are still treating me like an outsider. Forget it, I'll remember this and go back first." "Understood, Lord Wu Ming." Then, Wu Ming opened the portal and let the two of them in. Immediately after, Shiro Amiya also wanted to give his rank card to Wuming, but he was stopped by Wuming. Take them. Wuming placed the 5 job class cards in front of Shiro Amiya. Big brother. What are you doing? Shiro Amiya asked in confusion. Wuming had a resolute expression on his face as he looked at Wei Gong Shiro. Now, I need you to go back and fulfill your wish to the Holy Grail and take Meiyu away. Shiro Amiya was even more confused. Let's not talk about the Holy Grail's wish. What about you, big brother? I have to clean up the mess made by Julian, and I have to do it. After all, he felt like he was an enemy. Even Wuming was affected by that feeling. I won't explain the details to you. In short, follow the steps on this blueprint and quickly take Meiyu away. Julian's means are more than that. With that said, Wuming summoned a piece of parchment out of thin air. That was an indestructible manuscript that could be recorded with magical power, and it was set to be indestructible. Wuming stuffed the parchment into Shiro Amiya's hand, and then put 5 cards into his hand. Now, Saber, Lancer, Caster, Assassin, Berserker, plus your Archer and the Rider you just got, 7 cards have been collected. Wuming turned around, walked a few steps, and looked at Shiro Amiya with his head tilted. Although it's only been 5 years, it's been a really good time. Apologize to Meiyu for me, we have to be separated for a while. Big brother. Shiro Amiya held 6 cards in one hand and the parchment in the other, gritting his teeth. Although he didn't quite understand what the black mud was, it didn't mean that he didn't know the danger of the black mud. His nerves have been tense as if he was afraid of the black mud. I understand, big brother. I wish you good luck in martial arts. With that, Wei Gong Shiro drove his heroic spirit state, which had yet to be deactivated, back to his home. Well, then, let's get started. A large amount of white mist was produced from Wuming's sleeves, and it quickly rushed toward the black mud. In an instant, like a flame meeting water, the two had a violent reaction. Explosions occurred frequently at the boundary between the fog and the black mud, and the sound of explosions continued to ring out. Sure enough, I and it are natural enemies. Only I can defeat it, and only it can defeat me. After saying such a strange thing, Wuming directly condensed the white mist. In an instant, the white mist turned into a white and sacred dragon. Roar! The dragon roared, then opened its big mouth, and a lot of white flames spurted out. The black mud was burned, and the sound of the explosion was endless, and it kept rushing toward the white dragon. At this moment, the black mud has been wrapped around the white dragon's body. Like a mythical battle, the residents of Winterwood City saw this scene. The sacred dragon fought against the dirty and turbid black mud, and the black mud wrapped around the dragon and completely wrapped it. After a while, as if digested, the white dragon disappeared, and the black mud was full of vitality, constantly surging. Ha 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 ha. See, Hyunryong, this is power, this is God, this is faith, this is everything, this is the omnipotent instrument that can save mankind. Julian stood in the open space, his face black, his eyes red, and he kept roaring. I see. Wuming's figure emerged from the black mud, and the black gas gradually eroded Wuming. Is this the reason why you want to make a wish? How foolish. Yes, in Wuming's view, Julian's mind was not only contaminated by the black mud, but even his soul was as if it had been dyed with black. Simply put, there was no saving him. But Julian was a 16-year-old boy, how could he have been corrupted for so long? There was only one answer. Your real identity is actually the first head of the Ainsworth family, Darius Ainsworth. Julian stopped laughing and looked at Wuming with a vicious gaze. As expected of Lord Hyunryong, you actually saw the truth. As he spoke, Julian changed his appearance. His hair was still black, and his eyes were still blue. His hair looked as if it had not been tidied for a long time. His upper body was very cool, and his lower body was wearing a pair of casual pants, revealing his leg hair, and a pair of flip-flops. In addition, his cheeks had become slightly similar to Julian's. At this moment, Julian had completely changed from one person to another. Is this also a replacement magic? Wuming asked. That's right. Lord Hyunryong, this is a technique I am proud of, although I am surprised that Julian was able to hold on without being replaced by me. Julian, no, Darius, said. So that's how it is. Even his soul has been corrupted by you? Wuming already understood what was going on. Darius had used an unknown spell technique to swap his personality and soul with Aria's, but for some unknown reason, he was unable to completely swap with Aria, which was why this situation had occurred. But it's about time. In another 1 or 2 years, I should be able to take over this body, Darius said calmly. Then, he looked at Wuming. Lord Hyunryong, your power has been coveted by me for a long time. Seeing that you are about to disappear, I won't hold back. Wuming frowned. It seemed that Darius wanted to turn his power into a class card. Wuming smiled slightly. Then, he said, you are still too naive, Darius Ainsworth. My power is not that easy to obtain. After that, the black mud seemed to explode from the inside, and white mist leaked out. Explosions occurred one after another until the black mud was almost completely destroyed. Darius did not show any expression toward the black mud that was about to disappear. As if he saw Wuming's doubts, Darius explained, these items are no longer important. Even if Lord Hyunryong can destroy them, what can you do? You are about to disappear. Darius looked at the illusory Wuming. Although Wuming wanted to use himself as bait to destroy the black mud, the corrosion of the black mud had already reached the body of Wuming's follower. Wuming, who had reached his limit, was about to disappear. I have already arranged for Angelica to retrieve the Great Holy Grail. If there is a chance to see it again, it will be in the world after I make a wish. Goodbye, Lord Hyunryong. Wuming did not say anything about Darius' speech. He just looked at the direction of the Amiya mansion. After discovering that the spell he gave to Shiro Amiya was activated, Wuming turned into particles and dissipated. Chapter 125. Wuming opened his eyes and looked at the magical scene in front of him. Wuming was in a colorful space. Wuming could feel that this was the space inside the Great Holy Grail. Just like Shiro Amakusa, Wuming also entered the Great Holy Grail at this moment. Wuming could clearly feel that he didn't disappear, but was absorbed by the Great Holy Grail. Meiyu absorbed him into her body. What the hell is that black mud? Wuming frowned and recalled the black mud that he destroyed. Wuming originally thought that the black mud was contaminated with the filth of his hometown, but after Wuming was swallowed by the black mud, Wuming discovered that the black mud was the same as him. In short, it was like a brother to Wuming. And the feeling between the two of them was like two brothers who became enemies in order to inherit the family business. It was full of a melodramatic atmosphere. Wuming shook his head and decided to put this matter aside for the time being. Then, Wuming thought of the previous battle. Wuming floated in the air, helplessly holding his forehead, and said, really, there are too many drawbacks of the servant's body. The servant, as a deteriorated version of the heroic spirit, was used as a tool by human magicians. Not only was their power limited by their rank, but they would also be absorbed by the Great Holy Grail when they left the battlefield. As far as Wuming knew, the Great Holy Grail absorbed the servant's soul, but Wuming believed that the Great Holy Grail absorbed the servant's mana. No matter what, the servant was also a great figure in history. How could a mere soulfall ritual absorb their soul? And because Wuming put his entire consciousness into the body of a caster, it led to Wuming and his mana body being absorbed by the Great Holy Grail. I don't know how Meiyu and Shiro are doing. Sigh, I'm really unlucky. Now I can't even return to my body. Wuming complained. Wuming, as a servant, could rely on his special ability to break the contract and return to his seat, but now that he was in the Great Holy Grail, he couldn't do it now. At the very least, he had to wait until the Great Holy Grail was made a wish. Great Holy Grail, please create a world where Meiyu can live normally. Suddenly, a voice came here, and then the colorful light around him began to move, constantly changing. This is Shiro's voice. Wu Ming was very sure that it was Wei Gong Shiro's voice. Moreover, this was Mei Yu's body, which was also the body of the Great Holy Grail. However, this wish was full of strange things. Wu Ming clearly asked Shiro Amiya to take Mei Yu away from this world through the Great Holy Grail's wish, but Shiro Amiya made a wish to create a world where Mei Yu can live normally. Could it be that Angelica is already here? Wu Ming said uneasily. After taking a deep breath and exhaling, Wu Ming calmed down. At this moment, Wu Ming somewhat doubted whether the restraining force signed a contract with Wu Ming to cheat him. Although Wu Ming voluntarily became a heroic spirit, after all, it was to repay the restraining force's favor and to repay the restraining force. The restraining force allowed Wu Ming to absorb energy from the source of the world. At this moment, the many restrictions of the servant made Wu Ming somewhat speechless. Forget it, anyway, the heroic spirit palace has already been built, and I have already left my name on the seat. Then, Wu Ming looked at the colorful lights around him that kept changing. I wonder how the Great Holy Grail will fulfill this wish. The ordinary Great Holy Grail was just a crystal that stored a large amount of mana. In other words, the Great Holy Grail could do anything that could be done with magic. However, the Great Holy Grail might not be able to fulfill wishes that were beyond the scope of magic. For example, reviving the dead, reversing time, traveling to parallel worlds, and so on. These were all within the scope of magic. However, Meiyo Shitsuki family was an exception. Their family's godchild could be regarded as the true Great Holy Grail, the true omnipotent wishing machine that could fulfill all wishes. However, Wu Ming estimated that the wish to create a world might not be fulfilled even by magic. Even if it could be fulfilled, the mana in Mei Yu, the Great Holy Grail, would not be enough to support the wish to create a world. That was why Wu Ming was curious about how this wish could be fulfilled. I guess it would be to travel to parallel worlds. After all, Mei Yu, the Great Holy Grail, who did not have enough mana to create a world, would only be able to travel to a parallel world where Mei Yu could live an ordinary life under the system's judgment. Stopping his wild guesses, Wu Ming waited quietly. Taking advantage of this moment of leisure, Wu Ming began to meditate again. After all, this was the interior of the Great Holy Grail. How many people could enter? After a moment, 7 class cards appeared inside the Great Holy Grail and floated to Wu Ming's side. Wu Ming opened his eyes and looked at the 7 glowing class cards. At this moment, the class cards were being baptized by the Great Holy Grail and had undergone an unknown change. However, Wu Ming could determine that apart from the Berserker class card, the other class cards would no longer have the effect of corroding the owner's mind when Dream Summon, install, was used. Even if it was the Berserker class card, it would only give the user a berserk state where they would lose their mind if used for a long time. Has it begun? Wu Ming said calmly. After a moment, this space, together with Wu Ming and the 7 class cards, began to undergo an illusory change. This was the precursor of traveling to another world. In an instant, Wu Ming's vision was covered by a white light and he lost consciousness. Outside, Shiro Amiya supported his body that was being synchronized with the Nameless Archer class card and half knelt on the ground. On the opposite side, Angelica was holding the parting sword EA, together with Shiro Amiya, she watched the Great Holy Grail's wish succeed. Great, my wish has been fulfilled. Shiro Amiya said weakly. Angelica turned to Shiro Amiya and said, since the Great Holy Grail has fulfilled your wish, the mission is considered a failure. However, Lord Julian said that if possible, I will bring you back alive. Golden ripples appeared behind Angelica's back. Since you used the inherent barrier to resist the parting sword and didn't die, I will follow Lord Julian's instructions and bring you back alive. After saying that, a few silver chains shot out from the golden ripples behind Angelica and rushed toward Shiro Amiya. Is this the end? Shiro Amiya wanted to get up, but his body couldn't stand. Just as Enkidu, Heaven Lock, was about to touch Shiro Amiya, a strange force interfered with the trajectory of Enkidu, Heaven Lock. What? Angelica said in surprise. I'm sorry, little girl. I promised someone's request to protect this kid. A strong old man appeared out of thin air and said to Angelica. Who are you? Angelica questioned. He's just a useless old man, Zelrich said. Wuming had asked Zelik to take care of Shiro, Amiya and Mayu. Wuming couldn't stay here forever. He just didn't expect to leave so early. This was also why Wuming wasn't worried about Shiro Amiya. Then, I'll take this kid away first. After saying that, a special wave appeared around Zelik. Shiro Amiya and Zelik disappeared from Angelica's sight. Angelica was silent for a moment before leaving the Amiya mansion. Chapter 126. Not knowing how long it took, Wuming woke up. Ah! What's the situation? Wuming found that his body disappeared at this moment, only his consciousness was left. Wuming turned into a card, and it was the most familiar existence to Wuming. I became a class card. Yes, Wuming became a class card at this moment. Because of the Holy Grail and the class card, Wuming was affected by the class card in the Holy Grail, and his magical power was compressed and transformed into a caster class card by this true universal wishing machine. Wuming could clearly feel that he was now in a mirror-like space similar to an inherent enchantment. This mirror-like space was the same as the outside world, except that there was no life, everything else was exactly the same. It turned into a golden card that floated in a quiet and uninhabited place, emitting a few sounds. Although it's a bit different, the scene here seems to be Winterwood City. As a place where he lived for 5 years, even if some buildings or terrain changed, Wuming could clearly recognize that this was indeed Winterwood City. The card floated to a tree and lay down quietly. This should be the mirror world of another parallel world. If I'm not an exception, then the other 7 class cards should also be in such a space. Wuming reasoned. This can ensure that no one will get a class card and use it indiscriminately. I just don't know how Mayu is doing, Shiro Amiya. Zelik should have saved him, Zelik shouldn't go back on his words, probably. Subsequently, Wuming began to explore his current state. Wuming found that he should be able to materialize. Wuming began to try to materialize. Just as Wuming tried to materialize, a magic circle suddenly appeared in the open space in front of Wuming. A white light flashed, and a tomboy appeared in place. Rose-colored short hair and pupils, a black suit, and a tear mole under her left eye. She was wearing a reddish-brown suit, earrings on her ears, black leather gloves on her hands, and a long bag on her back. That's Lune Rune. Wuming saw that there were Lune runes on the tomboy's earrings and gloves. As the existence who mastered the original 18 Lune, he naturally recognized the appearance of other ordinary Lune runes. As if someone broke into his territory, Wuming instantly materialized. She looked the same as before, white robe, short blonde hair, golden pupils, and dragon horn ornaments on her head, but there was some magic power spreading from her body. Bazette looked at the servant in front of him and frowned. She seems different from the previous servants. After hearing Bazette's words, Wuming spoke. Can you please tell me what's going on here? Let me tell you something. Bazette looked as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He clenched his fists and maintained a fighting posture against Wuming. Please calm down, Mississippi. I don't mean any harm. After hearing Wuming's words again, Bazette thought for a moment, then put down his fists, but his body still maintained a tense state. After all, the other party was a servant, even if she was an existence that could be communicated with, she couldn't be sure that she was harmless to humans. Please don't worry. If I had attacked you, you would have died without a complete corpse. Wuming smiled and said something that made one's hair stand on end. It seems that you are a servant with a powerful real name, but you can't be too sure about that. It's still not certain who will win. Bazette said, unwilling to admit defeat. Oh, is that so? Do you want to fight? Wuming was also a person who didn't admit defeat. Since the other party said so, then he would play with her. After that, Wuming stretched out his hand, and a golden twisted scepter appeared in Wuming's hand. Enhance, increase, as the spell was recited, a large number of giant flames, giant magic bullets, giant ice blades, giant water guns, and other giant elemental attacks burst out toward Bazette. Bazette quickly moved, his hands with black gloves clenched. As the spell was recited, Bazette's gloves lit up with the light of Loon magic. He frequently used fighting skills, and the elemental attacks launched by Wuming were scattered by Bazette one by one. A green vine broke out from the ground under Bazette's feet and quickly wrapped around Bazette's legs. Bazette's face froze, his feet shook, and found that the vine was not broken. He immediately hit the vine with both hands. The vine was broken, and Bazette rushed toward Wuming. Wuming smiled, and his scepter flashed. Bazette punched Wuming, and like passing through a phantom, Bazette went through Wuming. A phantom. Was it just now, or from the beginning? Bazette thought. Then, several Wuming appeared around Bazette, and with a wave of his scepter, 4 huge elemental spirits appeared. Summon Primal 4 Elemental. The 4 elemental spirits of earth, water, fire, and wind roared around Bazette. Bazette frowned. This guy, is he caster? And these magic tricks that I have never heard of, are they kamikaze's magic? Huge rocks, surging water, exploding flames, and fierce gales all attacked Bazette. Loon runes were used by Bazette to resist the 4 powerful magic attacks. Wuming drew a rune with one hand, and several loon runes appeared, and Bazette's loon runes were instantly ineffective. What? Bazette cried out in surprise. Although his loon magic was not the best, he was still a top-notch talent in using loon magic. But the opponent could break his loon magic in an instant. It seems that the opponent also mastered loon runes, maybe it's the original 18 loon. That was Bazette's last thought before he lost consciousness. Wuming removed the 4 elemental spirits and looked at Bazette, who fainted on the ground. Young people just can't take a beating, Wuming said with the look of an otherworldly expert. Then, he began to study the magic that the opponent used when he came here. Kalas, have you analyzed what magic the opponent used? The dragon horn on Wuming's head made a sound. The analysis is complete. The cold voice continued, a specific space transfer technique, specifically used for space transfer in the mirror world. Then Kalas said, with all due respect, Master, you should learn the basic magic of this world. In response, Wuming smiled awkwardly. It was obvious that Kalas had mentioned this suggestion more than once. The only magic that Wuming mastered in the model moon world was the loon magic, and the Yggdrasil, world tree, system magic from another world. Compared to this kind of magic that leaned towards auxiliary analysis, Wuming was better at combat magic. This was also the reason why magicians in the type moon world were called magicians, because they basically studied the mysterious existence of magic. Only people like Jie Jieli, who was his master in the 14 Horsemen War, were called magicians. Magicians were magicians who used magic as props, and were usually looked down upon by other magicians. Mama, don't I have you, Kalas? Wuming smiled. Kalas sighed as if she had heard Wuming say the same answer many times. I really don't know if this is my honor or my failure. It was normal for the magic attire to be needed by the master. If the master no longer needed the magic attire, it meant that the magic attire was useless to the master, and was a waste. From the perspective of the magic attire, Kalas hoped that Wuming would use her. From the perspective of a family, Kalas hoped that Wuming could become able to explain everything without relying on Kalas. This was also why Kalas didn't know if she was honored or failed. Anyway, let's go out first. Chapter 127. Wuming relied on the data provided by Kalas to teleport and successfully left the mirror world. The moment Wuming came out, the mirror world collapsed. Of course, Wuming also brought Bazette out. After all, Wuming still needed this local magician, from this world, to be his guide, to ask for directions. It seems that this mirror world relies on my power to maintain its existence, Wyrm said. According to the analysis of the mirror world's collapse, the mirror world exists because of the existence of the job class card. Because Master left, the job class card's mirror world directly collapsed. After listening to Kala's explanation, Wyrm looked around. This was a forest. There was an empty space in the middle of the forest, which was the same as the mirror world Wyrm was in. A forest again. I really do have an affinity with forests, Wyrm said. He then looked at Bazette, who was lying on the ground. Then, I'll have to wake her up first. After a while, Bazette was leaning against a tree. A ball of water splashed onto Bazette's face. Bazette instantly woke up and hurriedly stood up, maintaining a defensive posture. No need to be so nervous, Wyrm was still holding the staff of Ain's Ergong as he spoke to Bazette. Now you can see that if I want to do something, you won't be able to stop me. Bazette seemed to have understood the situation and simply stopped resisting. First, who are you? Then, please explain the situation of this world to me, and why did you come to that mirror world just now? Also, you seem to know about the job class card. What's going on here? Bazette was quite honest. He gave up on lying and keeping his mouth shut and told Wyrm everything in detail. The tomboy's name was Bazette, and her full name was Bazette Fraga Macremies. She was a member of the Magic Association and had inherited the God's Holder family. Currently, the Magic Association had sent her on a mission to retrieve job class cards. This world was indeed a parallel world to the Moon world. There were also magicians, 27 ancestors, various clans, and so on. Basically, it was similar to what Wyrm understood in Mayo's world. Class card, a special magic attire that suddenly appeared in the spiritual vein of Japan's Winterwood City. It could trigger the power of heroic spirits. After the Magic Association detected the anomaly in Winterwood City, they discovered the existence of the class card. The appearance of the rank card would be accompanied by the appearance of the mirror world, which was where Wyrm had been before. But so far, only 2 class cards had appeared, and they seemed to appear periodically. Bazette was the person in charge of retrieving the cards. So far, the 2 cards that had appeared had been retrieved by Bazette alone. Therefore, after the appearance of Wyrm's card, the Magic Association had once again sent out an expert to retrieve the cards. It was just that they didn't expect Wyrm's card to have its own consciousness. According to Bazette, the 2 class cards that she had retrieved before were similar to the existence of the Shadow Servant, which had no consciousness and could only attack instinctively. Once stepping into the mirror world where the class card existed, the class card would materialize and attack the intruder. According to Bazette, the 2 cards that were retrieved were Lancer and Archer. Lancer's corresponding heroic spirit was Ireland's Son of Light, Ku Churin, and Archer's corresponding servant could not be determined yet. According to the other party's description of Archer's attack method, Wyrm could determine that Archer's class card was Shiro Amiya's heroic spirit. That is to say, the place where I am now is indeed the parallel world where Mayu can live an ordinary life. Since the class card has come here, then what about Mayu? Wyrm thought. Master, according to the other party's description of the periodic appearance of class cards, it is likely that Miss Mayu will appear after all the class cards have appeared. Kala said to Wyrm telepathically. Very likely. So, Miss Bazette, how did you defeat those servants with noble phantoms? Wyrm was very curious about this point. According to the battle between Wyrm and Bazette, Wyrm did not think that Bazette could defeat a servant by herself. Otherwise, she would not have been captured by Wyrm. Either there was someone behind her, or, you have your own trump card. Wyrm said. There was no other possibility, but Bazette didn't show it when he was fighting with Silent Wonder with real swords and guns. If Wyrm did not stop at the end, Bazette might not even have ashes left. In that case, it was impossible for Bazette to have a trump card. Bazette fell into silence. Why, don't you want to say it? Wyrm smiled. Forget it, even if I don't say it, as a magician of the gods, you will definitely use the magic of memory manipulation to look through my memory. Bazette was somewhat desperate. Wuming was a little bit dumbfounded. So this is the truth that you didn't hide from me. It seems that I really have the ability to control memory. That is the magic of Yggdrasil, World Tree. Who knows what kind of magic is set up in the game to control memory? I have this. As he spoke, Bazet took out the long, cylindrical pouch on his back and handed it to Wuming. Wuming took a look and immediately understood. There were 3 stone ball-shaped objects in the bag. These were all noble phantoms that existed in the world. Bazet told him about her situation. This stone ball was not only a magic suit, but also a noble phantasm called Fragarak, also known as Backlight Sword. Backlight Sword was the short sword of Rugr Mac Esalen, the god of war in Celtic mythology. Legend has it that this sword did not require the user to attack. It would unsheath itself and kill the enemy before they could draw their sword. Therefore, this noble phantasm had another name, Severer, which was why it was called the Sword of Question and Answer. It was an extremely rare noble phantasm. It was only passed down by the God's Keeper family. It had a specific condition, which was that it would only be awakened when the opponent used their trump card. According to legend, Backlight Sword would hit the opponent first after it was activated. It was a powerful noble phantasm that attacked later. Its normal form was a sphere, which was carried by Bazet everywhere. The production method was for Bazet to drip his own God's Keeper blood on the ore and place it in the basement for a month with a secret method. According to Bazet, this weapon that was both a noble phantasm and a magic suit could only be made 10 per year. So that's how it is. Is this the God's Keeper clan? Because I didn't feel that you were using your trump card, Backlight Sword could not be awakened and I couldn't use it. Even if I used it forcefully, it could only be used as a powerful magic bullet. Bazet looked at Wuming deeply. He was indeed a god magician to be able to knock her unconscious without using his trump card. That was just a coincidence. Who asked you to use the loon magic in front of me? One of the magic tricks I'm best at is the loon magic, said Wuming. So, what are your plans now, Miss Bazet? Chapter 128. If you want to let me go, you don't have to say that. Bazet said calmly. Wuming smiled and said, well, I'll let you go, but you're not allowed to report my existence to the higher-ups. Bazet frowned and then said, I'm here to perform the task of recovering the rank card. If I don't report your existence, then what about your rank card? Regarding this point, Wuming had long thought of it. Create green item, advanced item creation. Wuming took a card with nothing printed on it and handed it to Bazet. Then Wuming said, you tell those higher-ups that the heroic spirit power inside the rank card went berserk and self-destructed. After the explosion, only this rank card was left. Bazet looked at the rank card and put it away. Although this reason is barely passable, what about the self-destruct? For Bazet's question, Wuming replied, leave it to me, you don't have to worry about it. After discussing the matter, Bazet left directly. Wuming used fly and floated to the sky. Black hole. The ground where the mirror world was previously located was smashed and sucked in by the black hole used by Wuming, leaving a large pit in place. Of course, Wuming didn't want to cause any panic. After all, Wuming didn't want to cause any panic. Then, Wuming left directly. Bazet had returned. She had already set up a barrier around the forest for idle people to disperse. Before ensuring that the crater was repaired, ordinary people would not be able to enter. Bazet looked at her shriveled long cloth bag, the backlight sword in it was taken away by Wuming. But in exchange, Wuming took out an engraved stone, which was engraved with a rune second only to the 18 primordial rune. It's not a loss, and it seems like the other party is easy to talk to. However, we still have to find out the other party's real name. Golden hair and golden eyes. I remember that it's similar to Mesopotamia's mythological system. I'll start looking for it when I get back. After saying that, Bazet left again. The silent forest was originally very quiet at night, but because of the destruction, it became even more eerie and terrifying. However, no one would come here. 3 days later, Wuming sat on a huge rock on Yuanzhang Mountain, a mountain next to Winterwood City. There are no traces of Mei Yu and the other 5 class cards. Could they have appeared in other areas, or would they appear according to time? In the past 3 days, Wuming had explored the entire Winterwood City, including some of the areas around Winterwood City, but he still hadn't found any information related to the class card or Mei Yu. The only place with any information was the underground of Yuanzhang Mountain. Wuming could feel that there was a huge amount of magic sealed below, and his initial guess was that it was the Great Holy Grail. Although the magic was abundant, its aura was different from Mei Yu's. Therefore, Wuming didn't think that the Great Holy Grail below was Mei Yu. Maybe it's the Great Holy Grail of this world. Wuming thought. Because he was unfamiliar with this place, Wuming had been using the stealth spell of Yggdrasil to effectively avoid Winterwood City's magicians. Wuming didn't want to expose his identity, so Wuming didn't directly break the seal of the Great Holy Grail under Yuanzhang Mountain. However, Wuming was still worried about Mei Yu, so he decided to explore the Great Holy Grail under Yuanzhang Mountain. However, the test results showed that it was just an ordinary magic crystal without any signs of life, which was why Wuming was sitting there so leisurely. Then, since I'm free, I can study this backlight sword. As he spoke, Wuming opened the golden ripples and spat out a fist-sized stone ball. Wuming still remembered what Bazit had said 3 nights ago when he was being interrogated by Wuming. If the enemy uses a trump card, the backlight sword will produce a wave, and I can use the backlight sword's late to attack first condition to cancel the enemy's attack and hit the enemy first. But if the enemy doesn't use a trump card, the backlight sword won't be effective and can only be used as an ordinary C or D grade magic bullet relic. Coincidentally, Wuming did not think that using the Yggdrasil, World Tree, spell was a trump card. It was just a simple spell, so it could not cause Bazit's backlight sword to be activated. Moreover, other than the backlight sword and combat skills, Bazit was only good at Lune magic. That was why Wuming was able to break Bazit's Lune magic in an instant and hit Bazit's head, knocking him unconscious. Of course, Bazit still knew basic magic such as dispelling idle people. Wuming picked up the stone orb, and his mana seeped into the stone orb as he observed it. Kalas, provide assistance. Yes, master. As soon as Wuming's voice fell, a gush of mana emerged from his body and attached to the stone ball. Wuming closed his eyes and felt the space inside the stone ball. After a while, smoke rose from the stone ball. As time passed, more and more smoke rose. In the end, the stone ball was like a broken machine, smoking all over. Wuming opened his eyes and threw the broken stone ball on the ground. As expected of a late start but early start relic, a relic passed down from the god's generation to the present. Wuming relied on Kala's help to study the knowledge of reversing causality in the stone ball. Wuming found that causality was not that easy to understand, so after completely destroying the backlight sword, he gave up on studying it. The backlight sword, as the name suggested, was a sword that reversed time, the divine sword of the sun god Luge. I'm really curious about the relationship between the Gods Holder family and those gods. By the way, the Gods Holder family didn't refer to a single family. Instead, it referred to the families that had passed down the mysteries of the gods. They stored the mysteries of the gods in the form of pathogens in their blood and passed it down through their descendants. Moreover, the mysteries passed down by the gods' generation differed greatly. For example, the backlight sword that Bazit was able to create, the Fragarak of the war god was only passed down the method to create it, not the relic itself. By dripping blood on a special ore and placing it in a basement for a month, the backlight sword would automatically be created. But even with such simple conditions, it was possible to create a relic that could even kill a servant for a human to use. Forget it, this is giving me a headache. Let's not think about this for now, I have to find a place to stay. After all, he did not know when the other class cards and Mei Yu would appear, so he had to find a place to stay first. Chapter 129. After Wuming left Yuanzhang Mountain, he walked on the streets of Winterwood City. At this moment, Wuming had already turned his hair black. After all, he wanted to keep a low profile. A blonde foreigner was always very conspicuous. Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar streets of Winterwood City, Wuming sighed. Thinking about it, I really miss it. After all, Wuming had lived a peaceful life for 5 years. With Wuming's identity, he probably wouldn't be able to live a peaceful life for the rest of his life. Wuming also went to the original address of the Amiya mansion. It was just a wasteland in this world. Moreover, Winterwood City in this world wasn't destroyed. Wuming investigated the Great Holy Grail and learned that the magic power of the Great Holy Grail had existed for nearly 70 years. In other words, the Fourth Holy Grail War didn't happen at all. Moreover, the Great Holy Grail had been sealed and turned into a simple magic crystal under Yuanzhang Mountain. Although he didn't know why this world didn't have a Holy Grail War, it was undoubtedly a good thing, whether it was for Wuming or Meiyu. A world without a Holy Grail War could be said to be relatively safe, even if the 72 ancestors existed. Thinking about this, Wuming subconsciously walked to the food market that he used to frequent. A familiar voice came. Brother Amiya, come again next time. Thank you very much, Mr. Store Manager. Wuming looked at the source of the voice. As a frequent customer, Wuming naturally knew the store manager. And standing in front of the store manager was a red-haired young man. Shiro? Hearing someone call his name, Shiro Amiya turned his head and looked at Wuming. You are? Wuming smiled when he saw the face that was exactly the same as Wei Gong Shiro's but slightly immature face. On the streets of the residential area, Shiro Amiya and Wuming walked side by side. Mr. Wuming, do I know you? Even so, Shiro Amiya still took Wuming home. Wuming only said, it just so happens that I don't have a place to stay now. I'll stay at your place for a few nights. After all, Wuming knew Shiro Amiya very well. In the world of Meiyu, apart from his identity as a magician, Shiro Amiya was simply a good person. Therefore, Wuming believed that this world's Shiro Amiya's personality should be the same. This led to the scene just now. Shiro is really forgetful. We've met before, and you even affectionately called me Big Brother. Is that so? Then, Big Brother, yes, Shiro, what's the matter? Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming, who didn't let him speak at all. He wiped the non-existent sweat and felt a little powerless. I have a sister and 2 nannies at home. It may be a little inconvenient. I hope Big Brother doesn't mind. When he heard Shiro Amiya say that he had a sister, Wuming's eyes lit up. Then Wuming asked, what about your parents? Are they not at home? Shiro Amiya and Wuming turned the corner, then Shiro Amiya explained, they are often not at home because of work. They have been traveling abroad, so there is only me, my sister, and 2 aunts at home. I'm really looking forward to it. Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming in confusion. Mr. Wuming, what are you looking forward to? In response, Wuming said with a nostalgic expression, because I also have a cute sister. Then Wuming said, also, I told you to call me Big Brother. Why are you calling me Mr. Wuming? Then he looked at Shiro Amiya with a penetrating gaze. Shiro Amiya quickly said, I know, Big Brother. The two chatted. After a few minutes of walking, Shiro Amiya stopped in front of a small house. Big Brother, this is my home, Shiro Amiya said. Looking at this ordinary 2-story house, Wuming thought in his heart. Sure enough, Shiro Amiya in this world lives an ordinary life. I just don't know if Shiro Amiya in this world's sister is Meiyu. Big Brother. Wuming came back to his senses and looked at Shiro Amiya. Sorry, I was thinking about something just now, Wuming said apologetically. It's okay, let's go in. Then, Wuming followed Shiro Amiya into the house. I'm back, Aunt Sela, Shiro Amiya shouted, and then began to change his shoes. Shiro-kun, are you back? A beautiful woman dressed in a housewife's outfit walked out. Short white hair, tied in a ponytail, placed in front of her chest, red pupils. Looking at the red pupils, Wuming thought of Sieg. According to Wuming's understanding, Sieg was made according to the androids of the House of Einstein Barons. It seems that this world is not so ordinary. Wuming thought. This is... Sela saw Wuming standing behind Shiro Amiya and asked in confusion. Nice to meet you, beautiful lady, I'm Shiro's brother when he was a child, Wuming said gracefully. Shiro-kun's brother? How come I've never heard of this? Sela pointed her finger to her cheek, looking very puzzled. In short, my brother is going to stay in our house for a few days. Sorry to trouble you, Aunt Sela. Shiro Amiya quickly helped Wuming to smooth things over. Since Shiro has said so, well, I'll go and tidy up the room. After that, Sela walked into the room. It's really strange. Logically speaking, Aunt Sela shouldn't have agreed so easily. Wei Gongshi scratched his head and said with some doubt. Well, maybe I'm more polite. Wuming said with a smile. In fact, Wuming used magic similar to mental interference to slightly influence Sela and make her feel that this matter is normal. Shiro Amiya said. Brother. With a voice like an oriole, a young figure ran over from the living room. A child with red eyes, white skin, and long silver white hair ran over. She was wearing a one-piece dress. Isn't that Mayu? Wuming saw the child and there was a slight disappointment in his eyes. Ilya, I'm back, Shiro Amiya said to Ilya. Well, welcome back, brother, Ilya said cutely. This big brother is? Ilya looked at Wuming and asked Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya told Ilya what Wuming said before. Ilya, who was still an elementary school student, didn't think too much about it. In addition, with Wuming's mental interference, Ilya didn't care. Hello, big brother. I'm Ilya Phil von Einstein Baron. Sure enough, it's the House of Einstein Barons. Seeing Wuming not speak, Shiro Amiya thought that Wuming was wondering why his surname was not the same as Ilya's. Then, he explained, brother, because I was adopted by Ilya's parents, I followed Ilya's father's surname Amiya. Wuming smiled. There's no need to explain. I just thought of my sister. I haven't seen her for a while and miss her a little. Does big brother also have a sister? Ilya asked. Chapter 130. That's right. She is a child as cute as you. If you two meet, I believe you two will definitely become good friends. Wuming said to Ilya with a smile. Ilya blushed from Wuming's praise and didn't say anything else. Afterward, Sela tidied up a room. Mr. Wuming, do you need any daily necessities? It's not too late now and I'm going out. I can help you buy them. Sela said gently. Just call me Wuming. We are about the same age. You are Shiro's guardian and I am Shiro's elder brother. You and I can address each other as equals. I'll have to trouble you with the daily necessities, Miss Sela. Wuming said very gently. Aya, how can I do that? Then I'll accept. Wuming, you can also call me Sela. The conversation between Wuming and Sela surprised Shiro Amiya and Ilya. After all, they had just met for less than an hour and they were actually so familiar with each other. Sela went out and Shiro Amiya went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Wuming and Ilya went to the living room together. At this moment, Wuming discovered that a graceful woman was lying on the sofa in the living room. Her silver white hair was lazily draped over her shoulders and her red pupils were bored to death watching TV. Her upper body was wearing a loose short-sleeved top that exposed her back and shoulders. Her voluptuous breasts were on the verge of popping out. Her lower body was only wearing a pair of denim shorts and her white thighs were exposed to the air. Big sister Liz, a guest is here. Ilya reminded. After all, she also discovered that her big sister Liz's clothes were a bit revealing. Oh, it's Ilya. What's wrong? Liz said without turning her head, not caring that her spring scenery was seen by Wuming. It's big brother Shiro's big brother. He wants to stay at our house for a few days. Ilya hurriedly said. She turned to look at Wuming, her emotionless eyes revealing a trace of curiosity. Shiro's big brother. Welcome, welcome. The rather cold voice didn't let Wuming know that it was welcoming him, but Wuming still smiled. Nice to meet you, beautiful lady. Just call me Wuming. Nice to meet you. My name is Lizelet. Lizelet turned her head back and continued watching the anime on the television. Elia's shoulders drooped helplessly as she cautiously said to Wuming, big brother, don't mind her. That's just how Sister Lilith is. Facing Ilya's apologetic words, Wuming shook his head. I don't mind. Rather, I should say that Miss Lizelet is very interesting. Is that so? Big brother, as long as you're satisfied. Ilya said helplessly. Okay, Ilya, I'm going to see if I can help Shiro. You can go do your own thing. There's no need to accompany me. Wuming said. Big brother can cook too. Ilya raised her small head and asked. Of course. No matter what, I have a younger sister. How can I not practice my cooking skills? Wuming said solemnly. Then, Wuming came to the kitchen. Big brother, why are you here? Shiro Amiya, who was wearing an apron, asked in surprise. Of course, I'm here to cook tonight's dinner. Then, under Shiro Amiya's surprised gaze, Wuming and Shiro Amiya prepared dinner for today's House of Einstein Barons. When all the dishes were placed on the table, Ilya and Sela were stunned. Now, there were many exquisite dishes on the table. Just by looking at them and smelling them, the two of them had already fallen in love. Did Big Brother make all these? Ilya asked with sparkling eyes. Shiro and I made them together. Wuming smiled. Shiro Amiya was a little embarrassed. After all, although Shiro Amiya also made some dishes, Wuming made most of them. In fact, no one would feel that there was anything wrong with taking away Shiro Amiya's dishes. After all, compared to Wuming's cooking, Shiro Amiya's cooking was still too tender. I'm the person in charge of taking care of Ilya's meals and Mayo's meals for so long. If I can't make such dishes, then the name of the root dragon will cry. That was what Wuming thought. But Wuming often slacked off when he was in Great Britain. He was often not in charge of Artoria's meals and often left it to Guy or Bedivere. However, Artoria could easily tell that Wuming didn't make the dishes, which led to her scolding Wuming angrily. On the other hand, Merlin liked to watch from the side with a smile. During the 5 years that he lived with Mayu and Shiro, Wuming would also specially make her favorite omelette rice for Mayu. But later on, he would let Shiro Amiya cook for her. Although Mayu didn't want to scold Wuming like Artoria, her disappointed expression made Wuming feel guilty. As a result, the dishes that Wuming made in the past 5 years were comparable to the dishes that he made for himself since he was born. After everyone started eating, Ilya, Sela, and Shiro Amiya's eyes lit up. Even Lizette looked at Wuming strangely. It's not bad, right? Wuming asked with a smile. It's delicious. Ilya yelled. Hey! Big brother, why don't you stay at our house for a long time? Ilya looked forward to it. No, Ilya. How can you be so rude? You have to be a lady. Sela was still immersed in the sea of delicious food. After hearing Ilya's unladylike words, she instantly returned to her senses and lectured Ilya. Ah! I know, Mother Sela. Ilya looked at Sela with a headache. Shiro Amiya and Lizette looked at this, mother and daughter, calmly as if it was a daily life in the House of Einstein Barons. By the way, Wuming, you're really Shiro's big brother. You're also very good at cooking, Sela said. And Shiro, you too. You often cook by yourself and always compete with me for chores. I'm the nanny and guardian entrusted by Madam. How can you do this? Hearing Sella start lecturing Shiro Amiya, Ilya secretly sighed in relief. Wuming looked at the warm scene of this family. Sella kept lecturing, Shiro Amiya listened awkwardly, Ilya was glad that she got rid of Sella's lecturing, and Lizette kept stuffing food into her mouth without saying a word. She ate happily. If only Mayu was here, just like that, dinner for the day and Einstein Barons ended in a happy atmosphere. At night, everyone fell asleep. Wuming stood alone on the roof and looked at the bright moonlight shining on the earth. Mayu, you're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.